She was 6 weeks pregnant. He was about to kiss another woman in front of 1,000 guests, and she was inside the closet. Adrian Calloway Lee restored 17th century Dutch paintings for a living. Black, beautiful, slender, 29 years old. Her hands knew how to repair things people swore could not be saved. Her fingers still smelled of varnish remover when the text from her husband arrived. 3 words. "Stay hidden, please." Her husband was Lee Ti-woo. They called him the Quiet One. A black ink dragon climbed the right side of his neck from collarbone to ear, one red dot for the eye. He was the heir of the Lee dynasty. Manhattan's most dangerous art auction front belonged to him. Nobody outside the family knew he was already married. Tonight his mother was marrying him to someone else. Adrian crossed the marble foyer in a long black silk dress. The matriarch's people redirected her to the master suite. Sang-hoon opened the walk-in closet and asked her to step inside. She stepped inside. The door closed. Through the slats she watched the bride walk in. Han Jae-soo, ivory hanbok, white camellia in her hair, a heavy gold and jade necklace at her throat. The matriarch began to speak in Korean. The kiss was being prepared. Adrian pressed her palm flat against the wood. The pregnancy test from that morning was still in her tote bag, 2 feet from her own husband's mouth touching another woman's mouth. And then the bride did something with her wrist that Adrian would not understand until it was too late. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Adrian pressed the cotton swab against the canvas before the alarm finished ringing. 6 in the morning. The Vermeer had been waiting longer than she had. She killed the alarm with the side of her wrist, careful not to bring the varnish remover anywhere near her face, and leaned closer to the cracked surface under the magnifier lamp. The crack ran from the woman's earring to the corner of the painted window. A hairline fracture, 3 centimeters long, opened sometime during the last 2 centuries. Adrian had been working on it for 9 days. She had 4 left before the gallery expected the panel back. Her studio sat on the 3rd floor of an old Harlem walk-up, 2 windows facing 137th Street, 1 radiator that hissed, but never warmed the room past 60 degrees. She wore the black silk slip dress because she had slept in it. The thin gold hairpin, shaped like a brush stroke, held her chignon at the nape, exactly where she had pinned it the night before. She had not gone to bed. The phone vibrated against the wooden bench. She did not look at it. She finished the swab, dropped it into the glass jar of dirty solvent, and only then turned the phone screen up. Dr. Eleanor Vance. Adrian wiped her fingers on the rag tied at her waist before she answered. "You said 6. It is 6. I know what time it is, baby. Did you take it?" Adrian reached for the small amber bottle on the upper shelf behind the bottle of Dammer varnish where no one would think to look. She turned the cap with one hand. She tipped a yellow capsule onto her palm. "I am taking it now. On an empty stomach, there is bread." "Adrian, there is bread, Eleanor." A pause, the kind Eleanor used when she was deciding which battle to pick. "You are 7 weeks tomorrow. 7. You need food before that vitamin, or you will be on the bathroom floor in 20 minutes, and I am not driving to Harlem this morning. I have eggs. Eat them." "I will, while I am on the phone." Adrian carried the bottle and the capsule to the small kitchen wedged between the radiator and the front door. 2 burners, a kettle, a loaf of seeded rye that had gone slightly hard at the crust. She broke off a corner, put it in her mouth, swallowed the capsule with a sip of water from the glass she had left in the sink the night before. "Done. Liar. I swallowed it. You heard me swallow it. I heard you chew bread. Tell me you ate something else. I will eat in an hour." Eleanor breathed out through her nose. Adrian knew the sound. It was the sound Eleanor made before she told her something she did not want to hear. "Have you told him?" The question landed in the middle of the kitchen and stayed there. Adrian set the glass down. She walked the 4 steps back to the bench, careful around the corner of the easel, careful around the open jar of solvent, careful around everything. "No, Adrian, I will. When? When I have decided what to do. You have decided what to do. You took the vitamin. That is not the same thing. It is exactly the same thing." Adrian pulled the small wooden stool toward her and sat. Her back hurt at the base of the spine, the way it had been hurting for 10 days now, a steady ache that did not move when she stretched. She rested her hand on the bench. She did not put it on her stomach. She had not let her hand go there since the test. He will know if I tell him. He is your husband. He is also other things, Alina. A silence, not a pause, a silence. Has he hurt you? No. Has he ever raised his hand? No, never. Then tell him. It is not about that. Then what is it about? Adrian looked at the Vermeer. The woman in the painting looked sideways out of the frame, holding a small pewter pitcher, light falling on the back of her hand. She had been holding that pitcher for 360 years. Nobody had ever asked her if she was tired. There is an envelope. What envelope? On the door, when I came up last night. What envelope, Adrian? She breathed in. The studio smelled like turpentine and old wood and the faint, sweet rot of an apple she had not eaten 3 days ago. Eviction, 30 days. Alina said nothing for a long moment. You are kidding. I am not kidding. He has more money than God. I told him no. You told him no. I told him no in March. I told him no in April. I told him no the week we signed the papers at the courthouse. I told him I keep my own studio, I keep my own rent, I keep my own name on the lease. He agreed. And the landlord? The landlord raised it $900 2 weeks ago. I cannot make that. I did not tell him. Adrian, do not. Adrian, listen to me. Do not say it. You are 7 weeks pregnant with a baby whose father owns half the auction houses in this city, and you are about to be evicted from a 3rd-floor walk-up because you refuse to take his money. I know what I am doing. Tell me what you are doing. Adrian put the phone on the bench on speaker and turned back to the Vermeer. She picked up the swab she had not yet thrown out. She rolled it between her fingers twice until the cotton came loose. If I take his money, the baby belongs to his world. If the baby belongs to his world, his mother decides everything. His mother decides who teaches the baby, who feeds the baby, where the baby sleeps, what language the baby cries in. If I keep my own door, my own rent, my own lock, the baby has somewhere to come home to that is not theirs. That is your plan. That is my plan. That is not a plan, baby. That is a wall. It is the only wall I have. Alina was quiet again. When she spoke, her voice had gone soft in the way it did when she stopped being a doctor and started being the woman who had walked Adrian through 3 years of grief. What is the number? Alina, what is the number on the eviction? 3,400. Per month. Per month. Adrian, per month. He doubled the unit next door 6 months ago. He has been waiting to do it to me. Why now? Adrian stopped rolling the swab. She looked at the door of her own studio, at the empty hook where she hung her coat, at the small, dark, green canvas tote slumped against the wall. I do not know. She knew. She did not want to say it out loud. The lease had her name on it. Her name had been on it since she was 23. The landlord had never raised it more than $50 a year for 6 years. He had raised it $900 the week after she had been seen in the lobby of the Mandarin Oriental with a man whose photograph nobody else got to take. Alina, I have to go. Tell him. I will. Today. I will think. Today. Goodbye, Alina. She hung up before Alina could say it again. The screen went dark. She pressed her palm flat on the bench until the wood stopped feeling cool against her skin. She did not cry. She had stopped crying years ago, somewhere around the 3rd month after her grandfather's funeral, when she had sat in the same studio on the same stool and decided that grief was a thing you could turn into work. The way her grandfather had turned 40 years of being unseen into oil and pigment and a stack of canvases that nobody had bought. She turned back to the Vermeer. The crack still ran from the earring to the corner of the window. She picked up a fresh swab. She rolled it in the resin solution. She pressed it against the fracture and counted to 30 under her breath in Dutch because her grandfather had taught her Dutch the same year he had taught her how to read a varnish layer. At 8 in the morning, the front buzzer rang. She did not move. The buzzer rang again. Twice short, once long, not the landlord. The landlord rang 4 times, not the postman. The postman did not ring at all. She walked to the small intercom by the door. She did not press the button to speak. She pressed the button to listen. Mrs. Lee. Her hand stopped halfway to the latch. The man on the other side of the intercom had the kind of voice that did not need to be loud. Korean accent threaded under careful English. She had heard it twice before, once on the night she had signed her marriage papers, and once on the morning Tiwoo had sent her a black town car to take her to the airport in a snowstorm. Mr. Park. Yes, ma'am. He is not here. I know, ma'am. Then what? A small pause, the kind Sang-hoon used when he was choosing the word that would not break something. He asks if you will be available this evening. At the residence. She held the receiver against her ear. She watched a thin line of dust float past the radiator, lit by the slant of sun from the east window. He has my number, Mr. Park. He asked me to come, ma'am. Why? A longer pause this time. Sang-hoon did not pause unless he was deciding what he was allowed to say. He says he will tell her tonight, ma'am. The receiver went heavy in her hand. Her. Yes, ma'am. His mother. Yes, ma'am. She closed her eyes. She kept her hand on the wall. At what time? He will send the car at 7. I will be on the bench until then. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Park. Ma'am, did he eat this morning? A different kind of pause now. The kind that meant Sang-hoon had been asked this question by no one else ever and had no protocol for it. He had black coffee, ma'am, nothing else. Tell him to eat. I cannot tell him, ma'am, but I can put something on the desk. Do that. Yes, ma'am. She let go of the button. The intercom clicked once and went silent. She stood in the entry of her own studio with her hand still flat on the wall and her body very still. The radiator hissed. The Vermeer waited. The amber bottle was still uncapped on the kitchen counter. The eviction notice was still folded in the inside pocket of the dark green tote. The 7-week ache in the small of her back was still there. The husband she had married in a courthouse in Brooklyn 11 months ago, with 2 witnesses he had paid in cash so they would never speak again, had decided to tell his mother today. She walked back to the bench. She sat down. She picked up the swab. She did not roll it. She held it between 2 fingers. She looked at the woman in the painting, the pewter pitcher, the light on the back of the painted hand. You and me both, she said to the woman. She put the swab down. She reached into her chignon and felt the gold hairpin shaped like a brush stroke. It had been her grandmother's. Her grandmother had worn it the day she had married a man who had been told by his mother never to bring a black girl into the kitchen. Her grandmother had walked into that kitchen anyway, 58 years before Adrian was born, and had cooked dinner there for the next 41 years. Adrian unpinned the pin. She held it across her palm. She put it back. She returned to the Vermeer. She worked for the next hour without lifting her head. She replaced the swab 3 times. She refilled the resin solution. She turned the magnifier lamp twice to catch the angle of the crack. The thin line of pigment loss along the woman's jaw began, very slowly, to close. At 9, she sat back. She drank water. She put a hand on her stomach for the first time since the test, briefly, the way you check that something is still where you left it. She picked up her phone. She opened her email. 3 messages, 2 galleries, one from a number she did not recognize. The first gallery in Chelsea was canceling the November restoration contract. They had decided to move the project in-house. They were so sorry, they wished her well. The second gallery, in Tribeca, was canceling the spring contract. They had decided to defer the project. They were so sorry, they wished her well. The third message had no subject line. She opened it. A single line. No signature. The lease is the smallest thing you will lose if you do not leave him. She read it twice. She did not flinch. She did not stand up. She did not breathe out. She deleted the email. She emptied the trash. She locked the phone. She put its screen down on the bench. Then she stood, walked to the kitchen, opened the loaf of rye, and ate a slice with butter. She ate it slowly. She ate the whole slice. She drank half a glass of water. She came back to the bench. She turned the magnifier lamp on the Vermeer again. The crack on the woman's jaw was almost gone. The light on the painted hand looked, for the first time in 9 days, like light. She worked. At 11, the buzzer rang again. This time it was the landlord. She did not press the listen button. She knew the sound of his finger on the buzzer. 4 times, 4 short bursts. She had heard it for 6 years. She let him ring. He stopped after the 8th round of 4. Through the floorboards, she heard him climb back down the stairwell, slower than he had come up, his right hip clicking the way it had clicked since his fall on the back steps in February. She had heard about the fall from the woman in 2C, who heard everything. She returned to her work. The studio grew warmer as the morning aged. The radiator clicked. The light from the east window crawled across the bench, lit the Vermeer at 1 in the afternoon, moved off it at 3. Adrian ate 2 more slices of rye and a piece of cheese she found at the back of the small refrigerator. She drank a full glass of water. She walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the glass for 40 seconds, eyes closed, the way her grandfather had taught her to rest her eyes when the magnifier started to blur. At 3:30, she walked the 4 steps to the canvas tote against the wall. She knelt beside it. She unzipped the inside pocket. The eviction notice was folded into thirds. The paper was the same yellow as the capsule. She held it in her hand for a long moment. She did not unfold it. She knew what it said. Underneath the notice at the bottom of the pocket was a small black velvet pouch. She had carried it for 11 months. She had not opened it once outside the studio. She opened it now. The platinum wedding band slid into her palm. It was thin. It had no inscription on the outside. It had 4 characters cut into the inside. Hanya, in a hand she had watched cut them. She knew what they meant because he had told her on the night he had given it to her, sitting on the floor of this studio with his back against this same radiator, his black wool suit folded over the chair behind him, his pale olive throat open at the collar so she could see the head of the jet-black dragon coiled up the right side of his neck, the single red dot of its eye looking at her from under his jaw. Even so, she put the ring back into the pouch. She put the pouch back into the pocket. She zipped the pocket closed. She walked to the bench. She sat. She picked up the swab. The Vermeer waited. The eviction waited. The pregnancy waited. The husband she had not told waited. The mother she had never met waited. She rolled the swab in the resin. She pressed it against the last centimeter of the crack. She counted to 30 in Dutch. Outside, somewhere on the corner of 137th and Frederick Douglass, a car horn sounded once, sharp and brief, and was gone. The painted woman with the pewter pitcher kept looking sideways out of the frame. Adrian kept working. At 5:45, the radiator hissed for the last time that day and went quiet. The light from the east window was gone. The studio cooled by 3 degrees in 15 minutes. She heard the elevator clank up, stop on the 2nd floor, descend. She heard the door of 2C open and shut. She heard the woman in 2C cough, twice, the way she had been coughing for 2 months now. At 6:30, Adrian washed her hands. She undid the chignon. She brushed her coils until they sprang, then repinned the chignon at the nape with the gold pin shaped like a brush stroke. She did not change the dress. The black silk slip dress was what she had been married in. The black silk slip dress was what she would wear to meet the woman who did not yet know her name. She picked up the dark green canvas tote. She zipped the pocket again, even though it was already zipped, the way she always did. She put on the plain black low-heel mules. She put the platinum band on the long silver chain around her neck, under the dress, where it sat warm against the small hollow at the base of her sternum. At 10 minutes to 7, she went down the 3 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like fried fish from 1A. The landlord's door was open at the bottom. He looked at her as she passed. She did not look back. At 3 minutes to 7, the black town car was on the corner, idling. Sang-hoon stood beside the rear door, hands clasped in front of him, the small silver earpiece in his right ear, the coiled wire under his collar. He had a permanent crease between his brows. He did not smile. He did not speak. He opened the door. She got in. The door closed. The car pulled away from the curb. The street lights came on at exactly the moment the car turned south onto Adam Clayton Powell. Sang-hoon, in the front passenger seat, did not turn his head, did not speak into the earpiece, did not check the mirror. He simply rode. Adrian held the canvas tote on her lap with both hands. She did not look out the window. She looked at the back of Sang-hoon's neck, at the small space between the white collar and the dark hairline where most men have a tan, and Sang-hoon had a faint pockmark scar that ran an inch toward his ear. The car turned onto 5th Avenue. Her phone vibrated against the inside of the tote. She unzipped slowly. She pulled the phone out. She looked at the screen. 1 line. No name. Do not speak in the foyer. Do not look at the bodyguards. Do not take off your shoes. I will come down for you. She read it twice. The car slid through a yellow light at 96th Street. The driver did not brake. Sang-hoon in the front did not move. She locked the phone. She put it back in the tote. She zipped the tote. She placed her hand, very lightly, against the silver chain at her throat. She felt the small, warm circle of platinum resting there, hidden under the silk. The car kept moving south. The penthouse waited at the end of Fifth Avenue. The mother waited inside it. The husband waited beside the mother. And somewhere, in a room Adrian had not yet been told existed, another woman waited too, a woman whose name Adrian did not know, whose face she had never seen, who had been chosen for Tiwu before Tiwu was old enough to know what choosing meant. The car turned right. Adrian breathed in once, slowly, through her nose, and did not let it out for a long time. By the time the car stopped at the curb on Fifth, and the doorman in the gray and gold coat stepped forward to open the rear door, she had already decided 3 things. She would not say his mother's name first. She would not eat anything that came from the kitchen. And she would not, under any circumstance, let her hand wander to the chain at her throat in front of strangers. She stepped out of the car. The doorman did not look at her face. He looked at the tote on her arm and did not reach for it. Sang-hoon had moved around the back of the car and was already at the lobby door. He held it open with one gloved hand, his eyes fixed on a point past her left shoulder. Adrian walked through. The lobby smelled of beeswax and cold marble and one small white orchid in a stone pot on the concierge desk. She did not look at the concierge. She did not look at the bodyguards by the elevator bank. She did not look at the gold mirror above the console. The elevator was already open. Sang-hoon stepped in first. She followed. The doors closed. Sang-hoon did not press a floor. The elevator rose on its own, smooth and fast, a soft hum behind the wall panels. He stood facing the doors. She stood facing the doors. The numbers above the panel did not light up. There were no numbers. The elevator stopped. The doors did not open. Sang-hoon waited 3 seconds. Then he turned his head very slightly toward her left ear. "He is not in the foyer." She did not move. "Ma'am, I heard you. He asks that you wait in the study, the door at the end of the corridor on the left." "Why?" A pause. "His mother is in the foyer." Adrian closed her hand around the strap of the canvas tote until the canvas bit into her palm. The doors opened. Sang-hoon stepped out first. He did not look back. He walked across the white marble of the private vestibule, past the unlit chandelier, past the long lacquered console with the single black and white photograph in its silver frame, past the open archway through which Adrian could see, very briefly, the back of a small woman in a charcoal gray hanbok standing motionless in front of a window that ran from the floor to the ceiling. He turned left. Adrian followed. The corridor was long. The walls were a pale, washed bone color. The floor was the same white marble as the vestibule, polished to a depth she could see her own ankle in. There were no paintings on the walls. There were 3 doors on the right and 1 door at the end on the left. The door at the end was carved walnut, heavy, polished, with a brass handle in the shape of a coiled rope. Sang-hoon stopped 2 paces before the door. He turned to her. "Inside. The lamp is on the desk. The chair is by the window. He will come. How long?" "I do not know, ma'am." "Mr. Park. Ma'am, does she know I am in this house?" His eyes moved, very slightly, to the lacquered console at the far end of the corridor, where the back of the small gray hanbok was no longer visible. "No, ma'am." "Then why am I in this house?" He did not answer. He opened the door for her. He stepped back. He waited. She walked in. The study was small. 1 window, floor to ceiling, looking south over the dark green of the park. 1 desk of pale rosewood with a single lamp on a brass base. 1 chair by the window, upholstered in oxblood leather. 1 door. 1 framed scroll on the far wall, Hanya in fluid black ink that she could not read. The room smelled faintly of cedar and of the same beeswax as the lobby. She heard the door close behind her. She heard, 2 seconds later, the soft mechanical click of a lock. She turned. The brass handle did not move when she put her hand on it. She did not test it twice. She let her hand fall. Her phone vibrated against the inside of the tote. She unzipped the tote. She pulled the phone out. She looked at the screen. 1 line, no name, "Do not come out of the study. The family moved the engagement to Han Jaisu to tonight. I will come for you the second it is done. Stay hidden." Adrian reads the message 3 times before she lets her thumb move. The screen of her phone is so bright in the dim Harlem studio that the glow finds the cracks in her palm. Stay hidden. 2 words she has practiced for 6 years inside her own marriage. 2 words she has earned the right to hate. She lowers the phone to the workbench and presses the heel of her hand against the place where the eviction notice still sits, folded into a sharp white square beside the cracked vermeer. The varnish smell is sour now. The morning is over. The day is something else entirely. She does not cry. She has learned how not to. Crying is a luxury for women who have someone to dry their face. She has Dr. Vance, and Dr. Vance is in Midtown. She has Tiwoo, and Tiwoo is unreachable until tonight. She has the baby, and the baby weighs less than a fingernail, and the baby does not yet know that the woman it is growing inside has been quietly evicted from the city she was born in. So she does not cry. She breathes the way Dr. Vance taught her 4 in, hold, 6 out, and she folds her hands together until the knuckles stop trembling. She picks up the small, dark, green canvas tote at her feet and begins, very methodically, to put her life inside it. The X-ray sheet of the vermeer, rolled, her loop. The pregnancy vitamins Dr. Vance reordered last week, the bottle still sealed. A second sealed envelope no one knows about, taped under the workbench since the day after the courthouse. She does not open the envelope. She only confirms it is there. Then she straightens her spine the way her grandfather once taught her to straighten a canvas on a stretcher, and she walks out of the studio without locking the door, because the lock has already been changed in someone else's head. The car is already at the curb when she reaches the street. Black. Long. The driver does not look at her. The rear door opens before she touches it. Sang-hoon is inside, the silver earpiece coiled like a snail into his right ear, the black leather folio flat on his knee. He does not greet her. He hands her a second phone, a clean one, and waits while she powers her own down and drops it into a small Faraday pouch he has already prepared. The crease between his brows is deeper than usual. "Mrs. Lee," he says, and the word lands like a stone in still water. She does not correct him. She has corrected him before. He has never stopped. It is the only kindness Sang-hoon has ever offered her in 6 years, and she takes it the way a thirsty woman takes water from a stranger. The car pulls into traffic. The city slides past her window in long gray streaks. Sang-hoon watches her hands fold and unfold the strap of the tote and says nothing. He has been told nothing. That is the only thing she can be sure of. Tiwoo does not give a man like Sang-hoon a half answer. Sang-hoon either knows the whole shape of the evening or he knows the part he is allowed to know, and Sang-hoon is too disciplined to guess at the rest. A child cycles past on the sidewalk holding a red helium balloon, and the balloon catches the morning light and flares, briefly, against the tinted window. Adrian presses her fingertips to the cold glass on the inside as though she could touch the color. The child is gone in 3 seconds. The light stays in her eyes for longer. She tries the breathing Dr. Vance taught her. 4 in, hold, 6 out. Her hand drifts, almost without permission, to the flat space below her navel. She catches herself and moves the hand to the tote instead. Sang-hoon's eyes flick to the motion and away again. The crease between his brows deepens 0.5 millimeter. He is seen. He will say nothing. He will say nothing to anyone because Tiwoo has not said anything to him, and a man like Sang-hoon does not speak above his orders. She files that mercy away. She will need it later. The Lee penthouse occupies the top 3 floors of a limestone tower on Central Park West. The private garage entrance is behind a black steel gate that recognizes the car before the car recognizes itself. The gate slides. The ramp descends. The car comes to rest in a circle of cold blue light beneath the building, and Sang-hoon steps out first and opens her door before the driver can. He does not offer her his hand. He never has. The elevator is mirrored on 3 walls. Adrian does not look at any of them. She looks at the brushed bronze panel above the buttons and watches the floor numbers slide upward without sound. Sang-hoon stands behind her left shoulder. His breathing is slow and even. He smells faintly of gun oil and very expensive aftershave. The doors open into the private vestibule of the family floor. Marble. Cold. The single black orchid on the console table is real. Adrian knows this because she has stopped once before to touch it. Sang-hoon turns her not toward the great room, but down the long corridor to the right, past the closed double doors of the formal dining room, past the small chapel Myung-hee has never entered, to the study at the end of the hall. A maid in a black uniform crosses the far end of the corridor with an arrangement of white camellias balanced on her forearms. The flowers tower above her head, hiding her face. The smell of them follows the woman like a small private cloud. Adrian knows that smell. It is the flower Han Jaisu wears pinned above her right ear in every photograph the Lee family has ever shown the press. Adrian does not stop walking. Sang-hoon does not stop either, but the crease between his brows moves again, the smallest fraction, the way a sailor reads a sky. The study is Ti-woo's. She has been in it 3 times in 6 years. Dark walnut, floor to ceiling. A single low lamp burning under a green glass shade. The poddeck on the desk, face down. A glass of water, untouched, beside it. The desk chair pulled back as though he stood from it 10 seconds ago and forgot to push it in. Sang-hoon closes the door behind her without entering. She hears the soft, definite click of a lock that should not be on the inside of a study door. She has time to register that fact, and then the clean phone in her hand begins to vibrate. Ti-woo, not a call, a message, are you in the study? She types yes, sends it. Watches the 3 pulsing dots appear and disappear, like a small, frightened heart. Do not come out. Do not answer the door for anyone but Sang-hoon. Do not speak above a whisper. Do not turn on the overhead light. Then, after a long pause that costs her something she cannot name, I am sorry. She lowers herself, very slowly, into the leather chair across from the desk. Her knees feel hollow. The eviction notice in the bottom of the tote crackles softly when the bag settles against her shin. She places her palm flat against the warm wood of the desk and tries to find her husband's pulse in the grain. Tonight, the message had said. The family moved the engagement to Han Jaisu to tonight. Tonight. She turns the word in her mouth like a small, sharp coin. Tonight is the word Ti-woo used at the courthouse 6 years ago, when the clerk asked when they wanted the ceremony. Tonight is the word he used the first time he told her he loved her, in Korean, in the back of a taxi on Lexington, his hand cupped around the side of her face, as though he were sheltering a flame from a wind no one else could feel. Tonight is the word he used 3 months ago, when she told him, almost angrily, that she did not want his money anymore, that she could not breathe inside it. Tonight, he had said then, very quietly, we will talk about this tonight. They had not talked. He had been pulled away by a phone call from his mother before the dishes were cleared, and she had ridden home alone in a car like the one downstairs, and she had not let him visit the studio since. Now tonight is something else. Tonight is a woman in an ivory hanbok she has never met. Tonight is a kiss Adrian is supposed to outlast in silence behind a closed door. She presses both hands to her face. She does not let herself make a sound. The clean phone vibrates again. She does not look at it for a long moment. When she finally does, the message is from a number not stored in this device. Adrian, it is a Leaner. Your phone went dark. Are you safe? Dr. Vance, of course. Dr. Vance knows the shape of an emergency without being told. Adrian types with her thumbs, slow, careful, because she does not want to lie and she does not want to explain. I am at the penthouse. I am safe. I will call you in the morning. Please do not call me on this number. She sends it. Then she powers the clean phone down too, because if Sang-hoon does not yet know about the pregnancy, the last thing she wants is a calendar notification from a Manhattan OB/GYN lighting up the screen in his pocket. She sits in the dark study and listens to the building breathe. She thinks of her grandfather. She does not know why he comes to her in this moment. She has not allowed herself to think of him in years. He died when she was 9. She remembers his hands more than his face. The long brown fingers stained with the same varnish remover that now lives under her own nails. The small white scar at the base of his thumb from a palette knife he was too proud to put down. He used to set her on the edge of his work table and let her watch him glaze a sky. He used to say a painting was a kind of door. He used to say that doors could be opened from either side and that anyone who told her otherwise was selling her a wall painted to look like a door. She had not understood him then. She is beginning to understand him now. Her hand drifts back to the flat space below her navel. The baby is the size of a lentil. The baby is real. The baby has, in this dark study, a mother who is sitting very still in a leather chair while 3 floors of a stranger's house arrange themselves around her body. Adrian lifts her chin. She does not let her shoulders drop. Her grandfather would not let his shoulders drop in this chair. She will not let hers drop either. The Lee penthouse has its own particular silence. It is not the silence of an empty room. It is the silence of many people being very quietly competent in other rooms. Somewhere, 3 floors of staff are setting a table she will never see. Somewhere, the long teak doors of the great room are being polished with a cloth that has only ever touched teak. Somewhere, a string quartet is unpacking from felt-lined cases. Adrienne hears none of it directly. She feels all of it, the way she feels a draft under a door she cannot find. The clock on the desk reads 6:22. At 6:40, she hears the first footsteps in the corridor. Light, quick women's heels, not Ma Young-hee. Ma Young-hee does not walk in heels and never has, not even at 64. She walks in soft embroidered slippers and a rosewood cane, and the polished floors flinch when she passes. These steps are younger. They pause once at the door of the formal dining room. They move on. They do not come near the study. At 6:58, she hears a man's voice she does not recognize. Korean. Low. A second voice answers, also Korean, also male, also unfamiliar. The council. The Lee Council, the actual heads, the ones whose names she has only ever heard Ti-woo mention in the way one mentions weather, with a fatalist flatness. They are here. She has known the names for 6 years. She has never been allowed to put faces to them. At 7:04, she hears Ma Young-hee. The cane first. 3 soft taps on marble, then the voice. Smaller than Adrienne remembered, but clearer, the way a small bell carries further than a large one. Ma Young-hee is speaking Korean to someone, and Adrienne, who has spent 6 years quietly learning her husband's mother tongue from podcasts and from the kind cashier at the Korean grocery on 32nd Street, catches 1 word out of every 4. Tonight. Family, debt, honor, son. She closes her eyes. She lets the words settle into her like sediment into still water. She does not move from the chair. At 7:11, the door of the study opens. She freezes. Her hand goes to the tote on the floor without thinking, the way a swimmer reaches for the edge of a pool. The footstep is light. Single, not Sang-hoon, not Ti-woo, a woman. Adrienne lifts her eyes very slowly. It is not the woman she fears. It is a young housekeeper Adrienne has seen exactly once, 3 years ago, in a glimpse through a half-open kitchen door, polishing silver. The girl is no older than 20. She is carrying a tray. On the tray are a small porcelain teapot, 1 cup, a folded white linen napkin, and a single thin slice of pear cut into the shape of a leaf. The girl does not look at Adrienne's face. She places the tray on the desk. She bows, very low, almost to the level of the desk itself. She backs out of the room. She closes the door. The lock clicks again from the corridor side. Adrienne stares at the tray. The teapot is warm. The pear is fresh. The napkin has been folded by someone whose hands have folded 10,000 napkins. There is no note, there is no message, there does not need to be one. Someone in this house knows she is in this room. Someone in this house has decided, without asking anyone, that the woman in the locked study should be allowed tea. Someone in this house has done this without permission and without fear of being caught, because the punishment for being caught is less than the cost of not doing it. Adrienne does not touch the tea. She cannot. The thought of swallowing anything in this apartment closes her throat, but she folds the napkin smaller and smaller again and tucks it into the bottom of the tote beside the X-ray of the Vermeer. She will keep it. She does not know why yet. She only knows that a kindness given without a name should never be thrown away. She lowers herself back into the leather chair. The pear browns slowly on the porcelain plate. At 7:26, the clean phone, even powered down, hums once against her thigh. She frowns. She lifts it. The screen is black. It hums again, not the phone, the desk. There is a second device in the top drawer of the desk, and it is vibrating against the wood. She hesitates. Then she opens the drawer. It is one of Ti-woo's burners, matte black, cheap. The kind he uses for one conversation and then snaps in half. The screen is lit with a single line of text from a number that is only digits. Confirm location of the woman. She reads it twice. The blood goes out of her face in a slow, cold wave. The woman, not Adrienne, not my wife, not the conservator. The woman, the way a hunter speaks of a deer he has not yet seen but has already decided to take. The burner hums again. Confirm location of the woman. Time sensitive. She closes the drawer. She does not touch the burner again. She does not breathe for what feels like a long time. Then she breathes very slowly, the way Dr. Vance taught her: 4 in, hold, 6 out, and she places both hands flat on the desk to feel the wood under her palms and remember that wood is real, and that she is also, somehow, still real. There is a man in this house, or near this house, who has been told to find her and who does not yet know where she is. There is a husband in this house, somewhere down the long corridor, who has locked her in a room to keep her out of that man's sight. There is a woman in an ivory hanbok, somewhere in this house, who does not know Adrian exists at all. And there is a mother in a charcoal gray hanbok at the far end of the great room who knows everything, and is, very quietly, watching the trap she has set for 2 years finally close. Adrian stands. She walks once, slowly, along the wall of books. She runs her fingertips along the spines, not reading the titles, only counting them the way one counts breaths. When she reaches the 3rd shelf, she stops. There is a small framed photograph at the end of the row, half hidden by a stack of leather journals. She has never seen it before. She lifts it. It is Ti-Woo at perhaps 8 years old. Solemn, already with the faint vertical line through the right eyebrow, even then, standing beside a woman in a charcoal gray silk hanbok. Ma Young-hee, much younger, her hair already silver white, her hand resting on the boy's shoulder with the particular weight of a hand that owns the shoulder it is resting on. Behind them, blurred by depth of field, is a large oil painting on the wall. Adrian lifts the photograph closer to the lamp. The painting is partial, only the lower third visible, but she knows the lower third of a painting the way she knows the lower third of her own face. The brushwork. The signature in the corner, half visible. A long looping G followed by an oxblood red period. Her grandfather's signature. Her grandfather's signature, on a painting hanging in the Lee family home in Seoul, in a photograph from 1996, beside an 8-year-old Ti-Woo under the hand of his mother. She sets the photograph down very carefully on the desk. She does not let it tremble. She steps back. She presses her hand to her mouth. The clean phone hums in her palm. She has forgotten she powered it down, but it hums anyway because the second clean phone Sang-hoon prepared has a single line of code Ti-Woo writes himself. She lifts it. Adrian, the kiss is in 11 minutes. Whatever you hear, stay where you are. Trust me until tomorrow. Tomorrow I will explain everything. She types nothing back. There is nothing to type back. She is no longer thinking about a kiss in a great room. She is thinking about an 8-year-old boy with her grandfather's painting behind his head and a 64-year-old woman who knew Adrian's surname the moment Ti-Woo first spoke it, 2 years before he ever brought Adrian home to be looked at. The door of the study clicks. Sang-hoon. She knows the rhythm of his footstep before she sees him. He opens the door only enough to fit his shoulder through. He does not turn on the overhead light. He looks once at the photograph on the desk, and his face does not change, but the crease between his brows goes a full millimeter deeper, and Adrian understands, with a clarity that surprises her, that Sang-hoon has known about the photograph for longer than she has been alive. "Mrs. Lee," he says, and his voice is even softer than before. "I am going to ask you to come with me." She does not move. "Where?" she says. "Not far," he says. "The master suite, the boss has decided. He prefers you closer to him than to the corridor where the council will pass when they leave. The study door is too close to the great room hall. There is a better place." She watches his face. There is nothing on it she can read, and yet she reads everything she needs to read. He does not want her in this study. He wants her behind a door he can stand in front of. He is moving her not because Ti-Woo has changed his mind, but because Sang-hoon, in the last 7 minutes, has heard something in his earpiece that he does not like. "Sang-hoon," she says. Her voice is steadier than it has any right to be. "Is there a man in this building who is looking for me?" He does not answer. That is the answer. She lifts the dark green tote. She lifts the photograph of the 8-year-old boy and slides it, frame and all, into the tote beside the X-ray and the folded napkin. She does not ask permission. Sang-hoon sees her do it. His eyes flick down and up. He does not stop her. He steps aside to let her pass. The corridor, when they enter it, is darker than before. The wall sconces have been dimmed to the level the council prefers for the kiss. From the far end of the apartment, very faintly, Adrian can hear the first long note of a cello tuning. Underneath it, almost lost, is the sound of a woman speaking Korean in a low, even voice. and Adrian does not need to hear the words to know that the voice belongs to Ma Young-hee and that Ma Young-hee is, at this exact moment, explaining to a roomful of men in dark suits exactly why this engagement could not wait, and exactly which old debt it is finally erasing. Sang-hoon turns Adrian left, away from the cello, toward the master suite. The corridor narrows. The light dims again. Her own footsteps make no sound on the deep carpet. She does not look back at the study door as it falls closed behind her. 11 minutes, the message had said. She has 11 minutes to be hidden again, more deeply this time, in a room she has shared with her husband only in her imagination, behind a door that has never been opened for her before. Sang-hoon stops at the master suite door. He keys it open. He stands aside. She steps in. The room is enormous and dark and smells faintly of cedar and of the particular cologne Tiwoo wears only at home. The bed is made. A single low lamp burns on the far nightstand. Sang-hoon does not enter behind her. He stands in the doorway, framed in dim corridor light, and he looks at her with an expression she has never seen on his face before. A flicker so brief she will spend the rest of her life unsure whether she imagined it. It is something very close to pity, but Sang-hoon does not feel pity, so it must be something else. Recognition, perhaps. The recognition of a man who has seen this house swallow women before and who is now watching it open its mouth again. The closet, he says. He nods toward a door on the far wall, half hidden in shadow. The walk-in, inside, all the way to the back, behind the long coats. Do not come out. Do not turn on the light. The kiss is in 8 minutes. She walks across the room. Her low black mules make no sound. She reaches the closet door. She rests her palm against it for one long moment, the way one rests a palm against the door of a confessional before entering. Then she opens it, and she steps inside, and she pulls it shut behind her with a soft, definite click that sounds, in the dark, exactly like the click of a lock that should not be on the inside of a study door. The click is louder inside the closet than it was outside. Outside, with Sang-hoon's hand on the knob, the click was a small, business-like thing, the sound of a man finishing a sentence he had been saying all evening. Inside, with her own hand on it, the click is the sound of the world becoming smaller. It is the sound of every door she has ever walked through closing at the same time. It is the sound her own heartbeat will be measuring itself against for the next 40 minutes, whether she wants it to or not. She stands very still. She does not move her hand from the wood. The walk-in closet is the size of her entire Harlem studio. She understood this in the half-second of yellow light before she pulled the door shut, the long, quiet rectangle of it, the cedar walls, the rows of black suits hung like a private army. The faint, warm cone of a single sconce somewhere near the back. Now, in the dim, she relearns the room with her shoulders and her breath. She makes her body smaller. She breathes through her mouth so the air does not whistle. She tells the baby, without words, to be calm. The baby, 6 weeks old in her, does not yet have ears. She tells it anyway. She presses her left palm flat to the silk over her stomach, and she holds it there until her own pulse steadies under her own hand. The pulse is loud enough that she is sure, for one irrational second, that the suits behind her can hear it. They cannot. Nothing in this closet can hear anything. The cedar was chosen for what it absorbs. The carpet under her low black mules is 2 inches thick. The man who designed this closet built it, she now realizes, to keep secrets that had nothing to do with clothing. There is a louvered slat in the door at exactly her eye level. 3 thin horizontal cuts in the wood, the kind a rich man pays a carpenter to make look accidental. Through them, she can see a vertical sliver of the master suite, the end of a low platinum gray bed, a corner of a mirrored bar cart, a black lacquered console with one tall white orchid on it. The orchid is the only thing in the room she trusts. She does not press her face to the slat. She stands a careful inch back from it, so that her breath will not fog the wood, so that her dark eye will not catch the light. Her grandmother taught her that, decades ago, in a different language for a different reason. Stand back from the window, baby. The light catches the eye before it catches the face. She had not known, at 6 years old, that she was being taught how to survive a closet in Manhattan in 2026. Outside the door, in the suite, nothing happens for 90 seconds. Then everything happens at once. The door of the master suite opens, not the closet door, the outer door, the one that lets the rest of the penthouse in. She hears it from the slant of sound, the way a room changes shape when its mouth opens. Voices come in with the cold air. Korean. A woman's voice first, low, unhurried, every syllable laid down like a tile. Another woman's voice answering, younger, more careful. Then the soft, small sound of a cane finding the rug. Her stomach drops into a place it has never been before. She knows that cane. She has never seen it in this room, but she has seen it twice in her life. Once at a charity gala 2 years ago, and once in a photograph Taewoo keeps in a drawer he does not know she has opened. Dark rosewood. Brass tip. The exact small bell note of brass meeting carpeted wood. The cane belongs to Lee Myung-hee, and Lee Myung-hee does not enter rooms her son has not prepared for her. Adrian does not breathe for a count of 4. Through the slat she watches the room refurnish itself with people. Myung-hee comes into view first, only her back at the far edge of the mirrored bar cart, the floor-length charcoal silk of the hanbok moving the way water moves when it has decided. The silver crane embroidery at the hem catches the sconce light once, twice, gone. Behind her, half a step behind her exactly, comes a younger woman in ivory. The ivory is so bright in the dim room that Adrian's eyes water for a moment before they adjust. Han Jae-soo, the chosen bride. The white camellia above her right ear is so precisely placed that Adrian understands, instantly, that another woman put it there for her, and that the other woman was paid. Jae-soo's hands are folded in front of her in the long white silk gloves. They do not tremble, they are too still to be calm. Adrian has restored enough paintings of saints to know the difference between stillness and surrender. Myung-hee speaks. The Korean is slow, every word weighed. Adrian's Korean is not good. She has been learning for 3 years in secret, from an app on her phone, from a tutor in Queens she pays in cash, from the labels on the jars in Taewoo's kitchen. She knows enough to order food. She knows enough to read a door. She knows, sometimes, enough to understand the bones of a sentence even when the meat is past her. She catches 3 words in the first thing Myung-hee says, tonight, debt, father. Her fingertips press, without her permission, into the cedar of the door. Myung-hee crosses into the wider frame of the slat. Adrian can see her face now in 3/4 profile. The face is the face of an old portrait, very still, the silver-white bun catching the light like a halo behind it. The jade earrings do not move when she speaks. The lines around the eyes are the only thing that moves, and they move the way the surface of deep water moves, to register a thing without surrendering to it. The matriarch is not looking at Jae-soo. She is looking at the orchid. She says something Adrian does not catch, then a sentence she catches half of. The Han family has waited long enough. She says it the way a doctor says a diagnosis to a patient who has known for months. Jae-soo does not answer. She bows her head a 1/4 inch. Myung-hee turns. The cane finds the rug. Brass, 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 3 small clean notes. She speaks again, and this time the Korean opens up for Adrian like a door that had been only stuck, not locked. The kiss tonight is not for the family. The kiss is for your father. Adrian stops breathing entirely. Your father carried my husband on his back out of a burning house in 1985, Myung-hee says, and the Korean comes more slowly now, every word placed where she wants it. Your father was shot 4 times so that my husband could live. My husband lived 19 more years and built this dynasty on a debt he never paid. He died with that debt around his neck. He passed that debt to my son. My son has carried it for 12 years. Tonight your father's daughter cancels it with 1 kiss in front of 2 councils. Adrian does not understand every word. She understands enough. Debt, cancel, 1 kiss. Father, carried. Her brain, which has spent the last 40 minutes folding itself into smaller and smaller shapes, opens. The engagement is not an engagement. The engagement is a receipt. She stands inside the cedar walls, and she feels the entire shape of the evening rearrange itself like a Vermeer revealing its underpainting under an X-ray. The summons that was supposed to introduce her to Myung-hee. The redirection to the study. Sang-hoon's locked jaw. Taewoo's text. Do not come out for any reason. I will explain everything. Trust me 1 more hour. The hour was never about her. The hour was about a debt 40 years old that has a brass tip on a cane and a dead man's name in it. She presses her forehead, very gently, against the inside of the closet door. The cedar smells like cedar and like the man whose suits hang behind her. She closes her eyes for 1 second. When she opens them, she is a different woman than the one who closed them. She is not the woman the family is killing tonight. She is the woman the family did not know was here to see them do it. Through the slat, Myung-hee moves out of frame. Jae-soo stays. Jae-soo, alone in the rectangle, lifts her chin a single degree and looks for the first time at the mirrored bar cart. She is checking her reflection. She is checking how she looks in the moment before the moment. The white camellia trembles once with a small movement of her head, and Adrian sees, even at this distance, what she did not see before. Jae-soo's right hand is squeezing her own left wrist. Through the white silk glove, 3 slow pulses. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release. The bride is counting something. She is counting herself down. Adrian files that away in the part of her brain that has, for 3 years, been quietly cataloging every small thing that did not fit. She will look at it later. She does not have room for it yet. Ti-woo enters the master suite. He enters from the other door, the inside door, the one that leads through to his private corridor. He comes in the way he comes into every room, quietly, with no announcement, the dragon coiling up his neck, a black ink shadow that the sconce light cannot soften. His face is the face he wears in the auction house. Flat, polite, a face built 1 millimeter at a time over 36 years to give nothing. She has seen him in this face 100 times. She has never seen him in this face when he did not know she was watching. He is older in it than she has ever seen him. He stops 3 feet inside the room. He looks at Jae-soo. He looks at the orchid. He does not look at the closet door. He does not let himself look at the closet door, and the not looking is louder than a look would have been. Adrian knows him well enough to know the shape of the muscle in his jaw that he is not letting move. Myung-hee says something in Korean too fast for Adrian. Ti-woo answers in 1 syllable. Yes. It is the only syllable Adrian is certain of in the entire night. He crosses the rug. He stops in front of Jae-soo. He says nothing. Jae-soo, who has been counting her own pulse through her glove, lets go of her wrist. Her hand falls to her side, the white silk falling with it. She lifts her face. Adrian, in the closet, lifts her hand without meaning to and presses her palm flat to the inside of the door. Not pushing, just touching. The way you touch a coffin at a funeral that is not yet over. Ti-woo bends. He is taller than Jae-soo by half a head. He bends the precise amount required and not a millimeter more. His hand does not rise to touch her face. His hands stay at his sides. Jae-soo's hands stay at her sides. The kiss, when it happens, is the cleanest, coldest, most public kiss Adrian has ever seen. It is the kiss of 2 people signing a contract with their mouths because the contract requires it. It lasts 4 seconds. Adrian counts. At the end of the 4th second, Ti-woo straightens. He does not wipe his mouth. He does not look at Jae-soo's face. He does not look at the orchid. He looks, for 1/10 of a second, at the closet door, and then his eyes move past it the way a man moves his eyes past a window he is not supposed to know is open. She does not move. She does not breathe. She does not lower her hand from the inside of the door. Myung-hee says 1 word in Korean. Done. She turns. The cane finds the rug. Brass, brass, brass. The hanbok moves with the small whisper of water deciding which way to fall. She crosses the room. She does not look back at her son. She does not look at Jae-soo. At the outer door, she pauses for half a second and she says something Adrian almost does not catch because the syllables are very low and very slow. The debt is closed. Now we close the rest of the house. The door shuts behind her. The cane goes down the corridor. Brass, 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 until there is no more brass. Jae-soo stands in the rectangle of the slat for 10 more seconds. Then she lifts her right hand again, very calmly, and squeezes her left wrist 3 times under the glove. Then she walks out the same door her mother-in-law just left through, and she is gone. Ti-woo is alone in the room with the orchid and the closet door. He does not move for a long time. Adrian watches him through the slats. She watches the rise and fall of his shoulders inside the black brioni wool. She counts the breaths. They come slower than they should. They come the way a man breathes when he is teaching himself how to keep breathing after something has been removed from him with no anesthetic. Then he crosses to the bar cart. He pours 1 finger of clear liquid into a short glass. He does not drink it. He sets it on the lacquered console next to the orchid. He stands looking at the glass. He says, in English, very low, almost to himself, I will explain everything. She knows he is saying it to her. He cannot look at the door. He cannot say her name. He says it to the glass, and the glass is for her, and the orchid is for her, and the entire silent, unmoving stillness of his body is for her. She has loved this man for 3 years, and she has never seen him look like this. He looks like a man who has just paid a debt with somebody else's body and is waiting to find out if the body will forgive him. He does not wait. He cannot wait. He picks up the glass without drinking from it, sets it back down on a different square inch of the console, straightens his cuffs, and leaves the suite through the same inside door he came in. He does not look at the closet. The not looking, this time, is the kindest thing he has ever done for her, because if he had looked, she would have come out, and if she had come out, the entire night would have happened differently, and the woman she is about to become in the next 40 seconds would not exist. The door closes behind him. She is alone in the closet with the smell of cedar and the smell of her husband's suits and the smell of her own cold sweat under the high boat neck collar of the black silk slip dress. She lowers her hand from the door. She turns her back to the door. She slides down the cedar wall until she is sitting on the floor of the closet, the long black silk pooling around her ankles, the dark green canvas tote tipping over against her hip. She puts both hands flat on her stomach, low, under her navel, where the baby is the size of a lentil and has, tonight, learned its first Korean word without knowing it. Debt. She closes her eyes. She does not cry. The crying is not for now. The crying, if it comes at all, will come in 3 days in a Harlem studio in front of a Vermeer she cannot afford to repair. The crying is a luxury she will allow herself only after she has finished thinking. For now, she thinks. She thinks the way she thinks in front of a damaged painting. She thinks in layers. She peels the surface back and looks at what is beneath it, and beneath that, and beneath that, until she finds the original drawing the painter made before he had decided who would be in the picture and who would be painted out. Layer 1. Tiwoo did not betray her tonight. The kiss was not a betrayal. The kiss was a receipt for a debt 40 years old, signed in front of 2 councils, paid in the only currency the council will accept. He did not tell her because he did not know how to tell her. He did not tell her because the telling was the thing that might have killed her. He hid her in the closet not to shame her, but to keep her breathing, because anyone in this house who learns about her and the lentil under her hand becomes, by the simple fact of learning, a knife pointed at them both. Layer 2. The marriage to Jisoo is not a marriage. It is a ceremony. Whether the council intends it to become a marriage in the morning is a different question and one she cannot answer from inside a closet. But tonight, in this room, what she watched was an old woman closing a 40-year-old account in front of witnesses. The kiss was the signature. The wedding, if it comes, is the filing of the paperwork. Layer 3. Jisoo squeezed her own wrist 3 times before the kiss. 3 slow pulses like a heart trying to remember its own rhythm. Adrian does not yet know what those 3 pulses are, but she knows the difference between a bride and a hostage, and Han Jisoo did not stand in that rectangle of light like a bride. Layer 4. Myung-hee did not look at her son once, not when he entered, not when he bent, not when he straightened, not when she said done. A mother who does not look at her son in the moment she has rearranged his entire life is not a mother who is doing what she thinks is right for him. She is a mother who is doing what she thinks is right for something larger than him, and the larger thing has rules, and the rules are older than the sun. Layer 5, the layer beneath the drawing. Myung-hee said the debt is closed. Now we close the rest of the house, the rest of the house. Adrian opens her eyes in the dark. She has lived 3 years on the edge of this house. She has signed no paperwork the council has seen. She has been, by every careful design Tiwoo could build around her, invisible to it. The rest of the house cannot mean her. The rest of the house should not even know there is a her, unless it does. She sits very still on the closet floor with her hands flat on her stomach. And she allows herself, for the first time tonight, the thought she has been refusing for 40 minutes. The thought is small and cold and very clear. The way the thought of a hairline crack in a 400-year-old canvas is small and cold and very clear when you finally let yourself see it under the lamp. The eviction notice came on Tuesday. The eviction notice was signed by a management company she had never heard of, which had bought her building 6 weeks ago, which had decided to non-renew every lease in the line of studios that included hers, with 30 days' notice, the legal minimum. She had read it twice and put it in a drawer and refused to tell Tiwoo because she did not want his money to be the answer to her life. 6 weeks ago is when the lentil started. 6 weeks ago is when Dr. Vance, for the first time, asked her in the small examining room with the cream walls if she was sure she did not want to tell the father. 6 weeks ago is, she now allows herself to think, possibly when somebody in this house found out about her. She does not know yet. She will not know for 2 more days. But she sits on the floor of the walk-in closet in Lee Tiwoo's master suite, and she lets the thought breathe in the dark, and she does not push it away. Because pushing it away is the luxury she stopped being able to afford the moment she heard the brass tip find the rug. She stands up. She stands up slowly, with her hand on the cedar wall, because the blood has not been moving in her legs, and she does not want the lentil to feel her dizzy. She straightens the long black silk. She smooths the high boatneck collar. She picks up the dark green canvas tote, and she settles the strap on her shoulder. The tote is heavier than it was an hour ago, although nothing has been put into it. The tote is heavier because she is heavier. She has been given, in 40 minutes inside a closet, the entire architecture of a debt and the entire shape of a threat, and she is carrying both of them out with her into the rest of the night. She goes to the closet door. She puts her hand on the inside knob. She does not turn it yet. She presses her ear instead to the slat. The master suite is silent. The orchid is alone with the glass that nobody drank from. She listens for 1 full minute. She hears the hum of the building. She hears her own heart. She hears, in the distance, very faint, the brass tip of the cane somewhere on a hallway 2 rooms away, going on with its own business of closing doors that do not belong to her. She turns the knob. She opens the closet door 1 careful inch. Yellow light comes through the inch, and it is the same yellow light that came through 40 minutes ago when Sang-hoon was on the other side. Only now the yellow is on her side, and the dark is behind her, and she is the one deciding which way the door opens. She thinks about that. She lets herself feel it. The door of a closet inside a master suite inside a penthouse inside a dynasty, and her hand tonight is the hand that is choosing the direction of the hinge. She steps out into the suite. The orchid does not move. The glass on the lacquered console catches her reflection in its curve for half a second, a tall narrow shape in black silk with a heart-shaped face and a low chignon and eyes that are not the eyes the man who set the glass down knew her by an hour ago. She does not look back at the closet. She does not close it behind her. She leaves the closet door standing exactly 1 inch open the way she found it on her own side, because she is, in this single small act, beginning a habit she does not yet know she is beginning. The habit of a woman who from this night forward will refuse to close any door behind her that the house has used against her. She walks out of the master suite the way Ma Young-hee walked out of it, without looking back. And she does not yet know that in 3 months the closet door will still be standing open. And the matriarch of the Lee dynasty, passing it in the corridor at 3 in the morning, will lift her hand to close it and find, for reasons she will not be able to explain even to herself, that she can no longer bring herself to do it. The elevator ride down from the 47th floor takes 91 seconds. Adrian counts them. She counts them because counting is the only thing her body still trusts, the only sequence that does not require her to think about the closet slats, about the white camellia, about the 3 small squeezes of her wrist she was never meant to see. The numbers go in order. The numbers do not lie. The numbers do not ask her to choose a side. Sang-hoon stands behind her in the brass-walled box, hands clasped at the small of his back, eyes fixed at a point 6 inches above her head. He has not spoken since he unlocked the closet door. He did not need to. The earpiece in his right ear told him exactly when Ma Young-hee had reached the foyer, exactly when the council members had collected their coats, exactly when the corridor was clear for a black woman in a long black silk dress to walk out of a place she had never officially entered. In the mirrored panel of the elevator, she catches her own reflection for the first time in 3 hours. The low chignon is still perfect. The gold brushstroke hairpin is still angled exactly the way she set it at 6 in the morning. Her mouth is closed. Her shoulders are level. Her hands are flat against her thighs. Nothing on the outside of her body has moved. Everything on the inside of her body has been rearranged. The doors slide open at the private garage on sublevel 2. A black Mercedes Maybach idles in the third bay, engine on, rear door already opening as her mules cross the threshold. The driver does not look at her. The driver has been instructed not to look at her. Sang-hoon hands her into the back seat with the same flat, courteous gesture he uses for visiting dignitaries. And then the door closes, and the Maybach pulls out onto Park Avenue at 22 minutes past 11, and the city looks exactly the same as it did when she walked into the building 4 hours earlier. The city does not know. The city has not been informed. She presses her right hand flat against the cool leather of the seat beside her and lets the other hand drift to her lower belly, 6 weeks along. And she thinks, very precisely, the rival is another hostage. The rival is another hostage. The girl in the ivory hanbok with the white camellia above her ear, the girl whose family controls the Han textile fortune and the Han political contacts and the Han banking access, the girl whose marriage was supposed to cancel a blood debt left behind by a dead father. That girl squeezed her own wrist 3 times before tilting her chin up to meet a kiss she did not choose. 3 squeezes. 1, 2, 3. The same pattern Adrian had read about in a single paragraph of a single hostage negotiation manual she had picked up by accident in the Schomburg Center 2 years ago when she was researching grip strength loss in elderly painters. 3 slow squeezes of the dominant wrist, applied just before a compelled physical act, recorded across multiple cases of forced compliance. A tic the body invents when the mouth is not allowed to speak. Jaisu had not been told she was performing for an audience. Jaisu had been told she was performing for a council. The difference, in Lee Myung-hee's house, is the difference between a piece of furniture and a witness. And then the closet door had opened. Not violently, not with a soldier behind it. The door had opened the way someone opens a door when they are checking on a sleeping child. And Jaisu alone, the camellia slightly crushed where Tiwoo's lapel had brushed it, the gold and jade necklace warm against her collarbone, had leaned her forehead into the gap between the slats and the frame and whispered 9 words in careful, accented English. "I know you are here. He told me. I am sorry. He told me." Adrian replays the syllables in the back of the Maybach the way she replays brush strokes when she is trying to identify the hand of a forger. The stress on the word told, the slight falling cadence on me, the absence of any name. He, in that whisper, could only mean one man, and the telling could only have happened in the 72 hours between Tiwoo's summons and the engagement, which meant Tiwoo had known Jaisu would be brought to him tonight, and had used those 72 hours to do something Adrian had not expected him to be capable of. He had warned the other hostage. He had walked into Han Jaisu's family compound, or into a private room at the plaza, or into the back of a black car on Madison Avenue. And he had looked at the 27-year-old concert pianist who was about to be handed over to him as collateral. And he had told her quietly, briefly, without sentiment, that there was already a wife, that the wife was hidden in the closet, that the kiss would happen because the kiss was required, and that nothing about any of it should be confused with consent. He had told her so that she would not blame the wife. He had told her so that the wife would not blame her. The Maybach turns onto Lexington, and the streetlights wash across Adrian's face in slow, horizontal bars. She does not blink. She has, she realizes, been holding a small fold of the silk dress between her thumb and forefinger for the last 6 minutes, the way her grandfather used to hold a corner of canvas when he was deciding whether a painting was finished. She releases it. The silk smooths itself. Her phone buzzes once inside the small dark green canvas tote at her feet. She does not reach for it immediately. She waits 4 blocks. Then she leans down, opens the brass clasp, slides the phone into her palm, and reads the screen with the brightness turned all the way down. The message is from a number that has never appeared on her phone before. Korean characters. 2 lines, no signature. Ko gubuni dadchi anunmunun, anus, Kodeng sinuwihe yaradun munipnida enos. Her Korean is the careful, vocabulary list Korean of a woman who married a man whose mother refuses to speak English at the dinner table. She reads the message twice. Then she reads it a third time, slowly, the way her tutor taught her, breaking each phrase at the particle. The door that he did not close is the door he left open for you. She lets her head rest against the cold, tinted glass of the Maybach window. Han Jae-soo, 27 years old, daughter of the Han dynasty, ivory silk hanbok now folded over the arm of a chair in a guest suite she did not ask to sleep in, has just sent a married Black American woman a sentence that could, if intercepted by the wrong household servant, get the pianist's hands broken. The pianist sent it anyway. The rival, Adrian thinks again. The rival is another hostage, and the rival is somehow also an ally. Sang-hoon's voice comes through the small intercom panel on the divider, low and flat. Mrs. Lee, 12 minutes to your studio. Please confirm you would like the standard drop-off at the service entrance on 135. She presses the button. Yes, service entrance. Thank you. Mrs. Lee. He has never called her that out loud before. In 2.5 years he has called her ma'am, he has called her MS. Calloway in front of staff. He has called her nothing at all when his earpiece was live. Tonight, alone in the front seat of a Maybach, at 11:34 in the evening with a black wife in the back, and an engagement banquet still being cleaned up 47 floors above, Park Sang-hoon, head of internal security for the Lee dynasty, has chosen to name her aloud. She understands what he is doing. He is telling her that he knows. He is telling her that he has known for a long time. He is telling her that the woman he was just instructed to hide in a walk-in closet is the same woman whose marriage certificate, filed at the city clerk's office in Lower Manhattan 22 months ago under the joined surname Calloway Lee, has been sitting in a sealed envelope in his black leather folio since the night the ink dried. He is telling her that the lock on the closet door was, technically, on her side. The Maybach pulls up to the loading dock entrance on West 135th Street at 11:46. Sang-hoon does not get out. The driver does not get out. The rear door simply unlocks with a soft mechanical click and waits. Adrian lifts the dark green tote onto her shoulder. She slides across the leather seat. She sets her left mule on the wet asphalt of the alley, and then her right, and then she stands up into the cold June air of Harlem, and the door closes behind her without sound, and the Maybach moves off down the alley and turns north on Lenox and is gone. She stands alone in the alley for 9 seconds. Then she walks to the service door of the renovated tenement that houses her conservation studio, taps her key fob against the reader, climbs 4 flights of concrete stairs in the long black silk dress, unlocks the steel door of Unit 4B, steps inside, locks it behind her, slides the deadbolt, slides the chain, slides the floor bolt she had installed last September after a man she had never seen before tried the handle at 2 in the morning, and only then does she allow herself to set the tote on the long oak work table and lower her body very slowly into the rolling stool in front of the cracked Vermeer. The Vermeer has not moved. The cracked underdrawing of the woman at the window still waits for her. The bottle of varnish remover still sits beside the brush jar with the cap on. The small radio on the shelf is still tuned to the classical station at low volume, and a string quartet she does not recognize is finishing the last measures of something in a minor key. She does not cry. She has not cried since she was 11 years old at her grandfather's funeral, and she did not cry then either, because her grandmother had taken her aside in the church basement and said, very quietly, "Black women in this family do not weep in rooms that did not earn it." The Lee penthouse, Adrian decides, has not earned it. She reaches into the tote. She removes the small leather-bound notebook she carries everywhere, the one in which she writes pigment ratios and varnish dilutions in pencil. She opens it to a fresh page. She picks up the silver mechanical pencil that lives in the spine. At the top of the page she writes, in her neat conservator's hand, 3 words: inventory, allies, threats. Under inventory she writes, marriage certificate, sealed and filed, copy in safe deposit box at Apple Bank 125. Pregnancy, 6 weeks, confirmed by Dr. Alina Vance. Studio lease, 4 months remaining, current on rent. Savings, $22,400. In personal account he does not co-sign. Vermeer commission, 60% paid, balance on delivery in 11 days. Grandfather's portfolio, 12 unfinished canvases in climate-controlled storage on 129. Under allies, she writes one name, then stops, then writes a second. Ti-woo, Jai-soo. She looks at the second name for a long time. 20 minutes ago, Han Jai-soo was a stranger in an ivory hanbok. 10 minutes ago, Han Jai-soo was a rival who had just been kissed by Adrian's husband. 5 minutes ago, Han Jai-soo was a victim of the same machine that had built the closet Adrian had been hidden in. Right now, on a page of a leather notebook in a fourth-floor studio in Harlem, Han Jai-soo is the only other person in the city of New York who knows that the kiss meant nothing. She underlines the name twice. Under threats, she writes more slowly. Lee Myung-hee, the council, the Han clan who have already paid for a wedding, the blood debt, which has now been cancelled, and which means Ti-woo no longer has a structural reason to keep the marriage to Adrian hidden as protection, time which is now compressed, the pregnancy, which will show. She writes the last item with extra care. Anyone the family hires from outside. She closes the notebook. She does not yet have a name for the man in the wrinkled tan trench coat. She has never met Walter Ashcroft. She has never seen the ice blue eyes, or the salt and pepper buzz cut, or the small Sony recorder clipped to the belt. She does not yet know that at this moment, on a side street 1 block south of the Lee Tower, a 52-year-old ex-NYPD private investigator, hired by the Han clan 3 days ago, is sitting in a parked dark blue Crown Vic, eating a cold ham sandwich, and watching the digital photographs he has taken between 11:06 and 11:41 populate slowly across the screen of a battered Panasonic Toughbook. She does not yet know that one of those photographs shows her in profile, stepping out of the service entrance of the Lee Tower at 11:07, the long black silk dress unmistakable, the gold brushstroke hairpin catching the security lamp, the dark green canvas tote on her shoulder. She does not yet know that another photograph, taken at 11:46 from the rooftop of the building across the alley from her own, shows her stepping out of the same Maybach at her studio's service door. She does not yet know that the man in the trench coat has, sitting on the passenger seat of his Crown Vic, a photocopy of a marriage certificate filed 22 months ago at the city clerk's office in Lower Manhattan under the joined surname Calloway Lee, obtained that afternoon for $140 by a paralegal cousin of his who does not ask questions. She does not yet know that he has written, in the worn leather notebook in the inside pocket of the trench coat, the words leverage on the boy through the wife, and that he has circled the word wife 3 times. She does not yet know any of this. She knows only that she has counted 91 seconds in an elevator, that she has translated 9 words from Korean in the back of a Maybach, that she has written 3 columns in a leather notebook in a studio in Harlem, and that the small radio on the shelf has now finished the string quartet in the minor key and is moving into something softer, a piano piece she half recognizes, and the announcer says the recording is from a 1998 concert at the Seoul Arts Center by a young Korean pianist whose name Adrian does not catch because the announcer pronounces it too quickly. She lifts her head. She wonders, with the strange clarity that arrives after a body has been still for too long, whether Han Jai-soo's mother used to play the radio in the kitchen, the way Adrian's mother had played the radio in the kitchen. Whether Han Jai-soo had ever, as a child, slid a small hand under a closed door to fish out a toy she had been told not to bring to the table. Whether Han Jai-soo had been told, at 27, what Adrian had been told at 6, that there are rooms a girl enters and rooms a girl leaves, and that the choice between them is rarely actually a choice. She unzips the tote one more time. She removes the eviction notice that the building super had taped to the studio door at 6:15 that morning, the same notice that had been in the tote when Ti-woo's summons had arrived, the same notice she had folded into quarters and never shown to him. She unfolds it. She reads it again. 30 days. Non-renewal of lease. Owner reserves the right. She had refused his money. She had refused his money because she had spent 29 years being a woman who paid her own rent, and because the night she had said the words "I do" at the city clerk's office, she had also said, in a quieter voice that only he had heard, "I will not let your mother turn me into a kept thing." He had nodded. He had paid for nothing of hers. He had bought her one dinner, a small bowl of mulnaengmyeon at a basement restaurant on 32nd Street, 2.5 years ago. And after that she had paid for her own coffee, her own paint, her own subway card, her own studio, her own life. Tonight, sitting in front of a cracked Vermeer at midnight in a dress, she had bought herself for the engagement of a man she had married before he had been told he had to marry someone else. She understands that the eviction notice and the engagement are the same notice. Both of them are the Lee dynasty asking her, politely, whether she would like to leave on her own or whether she would like to be carried out. She folds the notice. She slides it back into the tote. She stands up. She crosses the studio. She lifts the receiver of the small landline she still keeps on the wall by the sink, the one-number doctor. Elinor Vance has had for 2 years, and she dials 7 digits she has memorized. The phone rings twice. Elinor picks up on the second ring even though it is past midnight, even though she has a clinic at 7, because Dr. Elinor Vance is the kind of OB-GYN who answers the landline at midnight when one of her patients calls. Adrian, the voice on the other end says immediately. Are you bleeding? No, Adrian says. I am not bleeding. There is a small pause. She can hear Elinor sit up in bed, can hear the soft creak of the brass headboard in the brownstone on 138th Street, can hear the small enamel stethoscope pin clink against something on the bedside table. Then talk to me, Elinor says. Adrian talks for the next 11 minutes. She does not tell Elinor the whole story. She tells her 3 things. She tells her that the family knows about the marriage. She tells her that there has been an engagement to another woman tonight. She tells her that she may need a place to sleep that is not her studio for the next 10 days, and a doctor who can come to that place if anything starts to go wrong with the 6 weeks she is carrying. Elinor does not interrupt. Elinor does not ask her to repeat anything. When Adrian finishes, Elinor says 4 sentences in the cream cashmere voice that has talked frightened women through worse nights than this one. You will come to the brownstone tomorrow at 5 in the afternoon. You will bring the tote and 1 suitcase and nothing else. You will sleep in the 2nd floor guest room which has a deadbolt and a fire escape. We will figure out the rest in daylight. Adrian closes her eyes. Thank you, she says. Do not thank me yet, Elinor says. Thank me in 7 months when the baby cries. The line goes quiet for a beat. Then Elinor says, very softly, Adrian, the dress you wore tonight. Burn it or put it in a bag in the back of the closet and never look at it again. Do not wear it for daylight things. Clothes, remember. Adrian almost laughs. The sound comes out of her chest as a single short exhale that is not quite a laugh and not quite anything else. I will put it in a bag, she says. Good, Elinor says. Sleep with the chain on. Sleep with the bolt on. Sleep with the phone under the pillow. I will see you at 5. The line clicks. Adrian sets the receiver down. She stands in the middle of the studio in the long black silk dress, and she looks at the cracked Vermeer on the easel, and at the leather notebook on the work table, and at the small radio on the shelf which is now playing a piece she does not recognize at all. She walks to the easel. She lifts the protective cover off the X-ray plate that the conservation lab had taken of the Vermeer 2 weeks ago, the routine scan she always orders before she begins any serious restoration. The X-ray is clipped to the side of the easel in a thin aluminum frame. She has glanced at it a dozen times. She has never studied it. Tonight, because her hands need something to do that is not folding eviction notices or copying Korean characters, she lifts the X-ray plate down, walks it to the light box at the end of the work table, switches the light box on, and sets the plate on the milky glass. The familiar ghost of the Vermeer appears in pale gray. The woman at the window, the folded letter, the brass jug on the table, and underneath it, very faint, almost invisible unless one knows how to look for the bone structure of an underpainting, the suggestion of a different image. Another face, a different angle, different proportions. She leans closer. Her breath catches in a way it has not caught all night, not in the closet, not in the elevator, not in the Maybach. There is something underneath the Vermeer. There is something underneath the Vermeer that is not the Vermeer. She straightens up. She does not yet know what she is looking at. She knows only that the underdrawing beneath a 17th century Dutch oil painting is the wrong shape, the wrong period, the wrong hand, and that the curve of a jawline she can almost make out under the woman at the window belongs, impossibly, to a face she half recognizes from somewhere she cannot yet place. She switches the light box off. She is too tired tonight. She is too pregnant tonight. She is too freshly out of a walk-in closet on the 47th floor of a building on Park Avenue tonight. The X-ray will still be here in the morning. She walks back to the easel, covers the plate, drinks half a glass of water from the sink, takes the long black silk dress off in the small bathroom, folds it into a soft cotton laundry bag the way Alina told her to, sets the bag in the bottom of the studio closet, puts on the gray sweatpants and the old NYU Conservation Program sweatshirt that have been her sleeping clothes since she was 22, lies down on the narrow dabed in the corner of the studio, pulls the wool blanket up to her chin, and, with one hand resting flat on her lower belly and the other hand resting flat on the small leather notebook beside the pillow, closes her eyes. Outside on West 135th Street, a 52-year-old ex-NYPD private investigator in a wrinkled tan trench coat finishes his cold ham sandwich, wipes his hands on a paper napkin, picks up a long lens, focuses on the fourth-floor window of Unit 4B as the light inside it goes out, and writes a single line in the worn leather notebook in his inside pocket. Subject home. Alone. Pregnant, possibly. Confirm tomorrow. He underlines the word pregnant once. Then he reaches for the photocopy of the marriage certificate on the passenger seat, taps it twice against the steering wheel, and, in the dark cab of the Crown Vic, begins, for the first time that night, to smile. 3 blocks north, Adrian sleeps with the chain on, the bolt on, the floor bolt slid, and a leather notebook under her hand. She does not yet know his name. She does not yet know that within 36 hours her landlord will lock her out, 3 gallery contracts will quietly evaporate, and Sang-hoon will arrive at Dr. Alina Vance's brownstone at sunset, carrying a typed note from Lee Myung-hee and a one-way ticket to Paris in an envelope she will not open until she is standing on the second-floor landing in her gray sweatpants with one hand on the banister and the other on the small leather notebook in which she has just begun, very carefully, to write a 4th column. The 4th column has only one word at the top. Proof. She does not yet know what proof she will find. She does not yet know that the proof is already in her studio, clipped to the side of an easel under a Dutch woman at a window, waiting for daylight and a steadier pair of hands. She knows only, as she falls asleep, that somewhere on the 47th floor of a building on Park Avenue, a closet door is standing open in a master suite, and that a 64-year-old matriarch in a charcoal gray hanbok is, at this moment, walking past that door for the second time tonight, lifting her hand and finding, for reasons she will not yet name, that she does not close it. She wakes at 4:17 in the morning to a sound she does not at first recognize. A small mechanical click. A second click. A pause. A third click. The sound is coming from the building across the street. Adrian lies very still in the dark of her Harlem studio, the camel wool blanket pulled to her collarbone, and she listens. The clicks do not repeat. The radiator ticks once. A truck passes on Frederick Douglass Boulevard. She sits up. She crosses the studio in bare feet, careful around the easel, careful around the Vermeer panel, still drying under its sheet of mulberry tissue. She lifts the corner of the curtain with 2 fingers and looks down at the street. The street is empty in the specific way streets are empty when something has just finished happening on them. On the 3rd-floor fire escape of the brownstone, directly across, a man is folding away a tripod. He folds it with the unhurried precision of someone who has done this many times and is not concerned about being seen. The tripod has a long lens screwed to the top. The man is wearing a wrinkled tan trench coat over a gray suit. He is built like a refrigerator that has been broken once and welded back together. He looks up. He looks up directly at her window, directly at the gap in her curtain, directly at the place where her eye is, and he smiles without showing teeth. He raises one gloved hand and taps 2 fingers against the side of his salt and pepper buzz cut in a small mock salute. Then he steps back through the 3rd-floor window of the brownstone across the street and is gone. Adrian lets the curtain fall. She stands in the middle of her studio with one hand on her lower belly and one hand braced against the cold plaster of the wall, and she does not move for a full minute. She has been photographed leaving Park Avenue at 2 in the morning. She has been photographed in a long black silk dress walking out of a private garage she was never supposed to enter. She has been followed home. The man on the fire escape was not hiding from her. The man on the fire escape wanted her to see him fold the tripod. She crosses to the small writing desk by the window and switches on the green shade banker's lamp. She opens her notebook. She writes, in pencil, in her small disciplined hand, 3 words at the top of a fresh page. He is paid. She underlines the sentence once. She closes the notebook. She walks to the kitchenette and puts the kettle on. She does not call Tiwu. She does not call Dr. Vance. She does not call anyone. At 4:19 in the morning, in a 6th-floor walk-up on West 141st Street, a Black American art conservator who has just turned 29, who is 6 weeks pregnant, who is the secret legal wife of the head of a Korean dynasty's Manhattan front, makes herself a cup of ginger tea and sits down to think about the architecture of what is now coming for her. It comes faster than she predicts. By 6:30 in the morning, the studio buzzer rings. She does not answer. The buzzer rings again at 6:32 and again at 6:34, and then a heavy fist knocks twice on the apartment door itself, which means whoever it is has been buzzed up by another tenant. She does not open the door. Through the brass peephole, she sees the wrinkled tan trench coat and the salt and pepper buzz cut and the ice blue eyes set into the square reddened face. And she sees the small Sony recorder clipped to his belt, and she sees the worn leather notebook in his inside coat pocket, and she sees the cigarette burns on the cuffs of the trench coat, and she keeps her breath as flat as a sheet of varnish. He speaks to the door. His voice is conversational. His voice is the voice of a man who has knocked on a great many doors and has rarely been asked to leave by anyone he could not eventually wear down. He says his name is Walter Ashcroft. He says he is a licensed private investigator in the state of New York, retired NYPD, 22 years in the 28th precinct, which is, he notes with a small dry chuckle, the precinct that covers her building. He says he represents an interested party. He says the interested party has asked him to deliver a courtesy notification. He says the courtesy notification concerns a marriage license issued in the county of Westchester on a date he does not. At this moment need to specify, he pauses, he waits. Adrian does not breathe. He says he is going to slide a single piece of paper under the door, and that she should take a moment to read it, and that he will be downstairs in the lobby for the next 40 minutes if she would like to discuss terms, and that if she does not come downstairs in the next 40 minutes, the same piece of paper will be in the hands of a 64-year-old Korean grandmother on Park Avenue by 10 in the morning. A single sheet of paper slides under the door. His footsteps recede down the hallway. The stair door opens. The stair door closes. The brass peephole shows an empty hall. Adrian kneels and picks up the paper. It is a photocopy of a certified Westchester County marriage license dated 14 months earlier, naming Lee Tiwu and Adrian Maxine Calloway, joined by a justice of the peace whose signature is smudged across the bottom in pale Xerox gray. Below the certificate, in a neat hand-typed addendum, are 3 sentences. The first sentence reads, "This document is one of 3 certified copies in my possession." The second sentence reads, "1 copy is for Madam Lee. 1 copy is for the New York Post Society desk. 1 copy is for the immigration officer assigned to Mr. Lee's next visa renewal." The third sentence reads, "The price of all 3 copies, plus my professional silence, is $250,000 United States dollars, paid in cash, delivered to me personally in the lobby of this building before noon today." There is no signature. There is no need for one. Adrian reads the page once. She reads it a second time. She folds it very precisely along its existing crease and places it inside her notebook between the words "he is paid" and the next blank line. She does not go downstairs. She does not call Tiwu. She sits with her hands flat on the surface of her writing desk for 11 minutes, and at the end of the 11th minute she opens her laptop and writes a single email to Dr. Eleanor Vance asking, in carefully neutral language, whether her next prenatal appointment can be moved from Thursday to a clinic outside Manhattan. Dr. Vance writes back within 4 minutes. "Mount Vernon, 2 o'clock. Use the side entrance." Adrian closes the laptop. At 10:04, her landlord knocks. Reynaldo, the soft-spoken Dominican man who has rented her this studio for 3 years, will not meet her eyes. He says in Spanish that he is very sorry, that there is a problem with the lease, that the management company has asked him to change the locks today, that he has been given an envelope with 3 months of her security deposit returned in advance, and that her things will be packed by a bonded crew and placed in climate-controlled storage on 125th Street. She asks who informed him. He says a man in a tan coat handed him an envelope at 7:30 with the security deposit and a separate sum of cash for his trouble, and that the man said the lady upstairs would understand. She thanks Reynaldo. She closes the door. She leans her forehead against it for one breath. She stands up straight. By 11 in the morning, her phone has begun to vibrate in a way it has not vibrated before. The first message is from the Frick collection. The conservation department regrets to inform her that the upcoming Vermeer restoration consultation, scheduled for next month, has been postponed indefinitely pending an internal review of vendor contracts. The second message is from a private gallery in Tribeca. The owner regrets to inform her that the 17th century Dutch landscape she has been restoring for the past 4 months will be transferred to another conservator effective immediately, with full payment for hours already logged. The third message is from a Sotheby's specialist who has sent her clients for 2 years. The specialist says, in language so polite, it sounds like an apology written by a lawyer, that she will not be able to continue making referrals at this time. By 11:30, there are 7 such messages. By 12:15, there are 11. Every contract she has ever held in this city is being closed out, with full payment, with maximum courtesy, with no possibility of appeal. No one is angry with her. No one accuses her of anything. The doors are simply, gently, expensively closing. She understands what is happening. She understands it the way she understands underpainting. Someone is removing her color by color, glaze by glaze, until the surface of her professional life is bare canvas again. The work is being done by someone who knows how a black woman's career in a luxury industry is structured. The work is being done by someone who knows that referrals are the load-bearing wall. This is not Ashcroft. Ashcroft cannot reach the conservation department of the Frick. Ashcroft does not have a Sotheby's specialist on retainer. Ashcroft is the small knife at her throat in the lobby. The hand on the other end of the gallery phones is older, paler, smaller, sheathed in charcoal gray silk. Ma Young-hee already knows. Adrienne sits down on the edge of her bed and she allows herself, for the first time since 4:17, a single small sound. It is not a sob. It is closer to the sound a person makes when she finally puts down something very heavy she has been carrying for a long time and only realizes the weight after the floor takes it. She places her right hand on her belly. 6 weeks. The size of a sweet pea, Dr. Vance had said on the phone yesterday morning. Heartbeat detectable next week. She breathes in. She breathes out. She lifts her chin. At 12:40 in the afternoon, there is a knock on her door that is different from every knock that has come before. It is 3 measured taps. Pause, 3 measured taps. She knows that knock. She has heard that knock at the threshold of a brass-walled elevator and at the seam of a walk-in closet door. She opens the door. Park Sang-hoon stands in the hallway in a perfectly pressed black 3-piece suit, the silver earpiece in his right ear, the black leather folio under his left arm. He does not enter. He does not look past her shoulder into the studio. He keeps his eyes at a point 6 inches above her head, exactly as he did in the elevator. He bows, not deeply. 5 degrees. The bow of a man delivering a document, not the bow of a man asking permission. He opens the folio. He removes a single envelope of heavy cream paper, sealed with a small dot of dark red wax pressed with no crest. He extends it to her on the flat of his palm. He says, in English so clean it carries no accent at all, that Madame Lee asks her to read this in private and at her own pace, and that he has been instructed to wait downstairs in the car for 1 hour in case she requires transportation. She takes the envelope. He bows again. 5 degrees. He turns. He walks down the hallway toward the stairs. He does not look back. Adrienne closes the door. She locks it. She slides the chain into the brass keeper. She walks to her writing desk. She switches on the green shade lamp, even though it is full daylight, because she wants the small circle of yellow light around the page when she opens what is inside the envelope. She breaks the wax seal with her thumbnail. Inside the envelope are 3 items. The first item is a single sheet of cream paper, typed in English on what is clearly an electric typewriter, not a printer. The letters have the slight unevenness of struck keys. The paper has been signed at the bottom with a small inked seal in dark red, no name. The second item is a one-way first-class airline ticket, paper, not electronic, issued by Air France for a flight departing John F. Kennedy International Airport at 11:55 tomorrow evening. Destination Charles de Gaulle, Paris, with a single connecting reservation to a small private clinic in the 6th arrondissement that specializes in the discreet medical care of foreign nationals. The third item is a small black and white printout of an ultrasound image. It is dated 3 days ago. It is taken from an angle Adrienne herself has never seen because Adrienne has never had an ultrasound. It is the inside of her own womb, photographed without her knowledge, 6 weeks along, the small sweet pea shape unmistakable in the center of the gestational sac. Adrienne sets the 3 items in a row on the desk. The ultrasound first, the plane ticket second, the typed letter third. She reads the letter. The letter is short. The letter is in flawless English, written by someone whose first language is not English, but who has lived inside English for 40 years. The letter does not address her by name. The letter does not use her name once. The letter says, "We are grateful for the discretion you have shown the family in difficult circumstances. The enclosed reservation is offered as a small gesture of our appreciation." The clinic in the 6th arrondissement is the finest of its kind in Europe. The procedure is fully covered. After the procedure, a permanent allowance will be deposited monthly into an account of your designation, on the single understanding that you will not return to the city of New York for a period of no fewer than 10 years, and that you will not contact, by any means, any member of the Lee family during that time. The letter ends with a single sentence beneath the inked red seal. The sentence reads, "The image enclosed is for your information only. We trust that a woman of your education will understand that a child carried under these conditions cannot be permitted to bear our name." Adrienne reads the sentence twice. She does not cry. Crying is for a later hour. Crying is for a private hour. Right now, her body is doing something very precise. Her body is taking the letter, and the ultrasound, and the plane ticket, and the marriage license photocopy from the morning, and the eviction at 10:04, and the 11 canceled contracts, and the man on the fire escape with the long lens. And her body is sorting all of it the way her hands sort layers of varnish under a binocular microscope. Top layer, layer beneath that, original ground. The top layer is Ashcroft. The bank error money, the threat in the lobby, the photocopy under the door. The layer beneath is the systemic eviction, the lease lockout, the vanished gallery contracts, the polite, expensive closing of every door in her professional life inside the space of 3 hours. The layer beneath that is the ultrasound. Someone with surgical access to her medical records has photographed the inside of her own body and slid the photograph into a cream envelope and offered it back to her as a courtesy. The Lee family has paid an OB/GYN somewhere, not Dr. Vance, never Dr. Vance, but someone in the same hospital system who could access a referral chart to confirm in writing what the family already suspected the night Tiwu summoned her to the penthouse. The original ground, beneath all the layers, is the simplest sentence of the entire letter. A child carried under these conditions cannot be permitted to bear our name. Cannot be permitted. Adrienne lays the letter flat. She lays the ultrasound on top of the letter, centered, so that the small sweet pea shape is positioned exactly over the red inked seal at the bottom of the typed page. She lays the plane ticket beside both, slightly diagonal, the way she would arrange 3 objects in a Dutch still life if she were composing one. She steps back from the desk. She studies the arrangement. The composition is, in its way, a perfect vanitas, the seal of a dynasty, the shadow of a child, the gilt edge of an offered exile, all caught in the small circle of yellow light from a banker's lamp at 12:52 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in June. She thinks, very clearly, they know, They have known since before the engagement banquet. They have known since before Sang-hoon opened the closet door. They have known since before Ti-woo whispered into the brass keyhole that he had taken steps. The steps Ti-woo took were not enough, because Ti-woo does not know that his mother has had a discreet contact inside Mount Sinai's records department for 19 years. And then she thinks the second sentence, which is harder. They have known about the pregnancy, and they have decided, calmly, with cream paper and a sealed wax dot, that the pregnancy will not be permitted to continue inside the borders of the United States. The pregnancy, not the marriage. The marriage is a small problem with a known price tag. The marriage is the top layer. The pregnancy is the original ground. Because the pregnancy is the only thing in this entire architecture that Ma Young-hee cannot annul, cannot bribe, cannot transfer, cannot subcontract to a man in a tan trench coat. A child of Lee Ti-woo and Adrienne Calloway, born in the city of New York, on American soil, to an American mother, with an American birth certificate, listing the head of the Lee dynasty's Manhattan front as legal father. That child changes the inheritance line of a 400-year-old family. That child cannot be unwound by a wedding banquet to hand jaisu, no matter how many camellias are pinned above how many silk gloves. That child is a permanent shift in the ground beneath the dynasty's feet. Ma Young-hee will not permit a permanent shift. Adrienne sits down very slowly in the chair at her writing desk. She places both palms flat on the surface, on either side of the composed still life of her own attempted erasure. She looks at the small sweet pea shape in the center of the ultrasound. She speaks aloud for the first time since 4:17 that morning. Her voice is quiet. Her voice is steady. Her voice is the voice of a conservator addressing a panel that has just been brought into her studio with 3 centuries of damage on its surface. She says, "I see you." She says it to the ultrasound. She says it to the typed letter. She says it to the cream envelope. She says it, in some other room of her mind, to a 64-year-old woman in a charcoal gray hanbok, standing in the hallway of a 47th floor penthouse on Park Avenue, beside a closet door that has been left open for nearly 14 hours and that no one has yet found the courage to close. I see you. The afternoon light through the studio window has shifted from yellow to white. The radiator has ticked 4 more times. The phone has vibrated 3 more times with 3 more canceled contracts. Down at the curb, in a parked black Mercedes Maybach, Park Sang-hoon is sitting in the driver's seat with his hands at 10 and 2, the silver earpiece silent, the engine idling, waiting for an hour that he will, at 1:40 exactly, allow to expire without ringing her buzzer again. Adrienne does not go down to the car. Instead, she stands. She crosses the studio. She lifts the sheet of mulberry tissue from the easel and she looks at the cracked Vermeer panel underneath it. The small interior scene she has been restoring for 3 months, the woman at the virginal, the light from the leaded window, the worn map on the back wall. She looks at the panel the way she has looked at it 300 times before, and then she looks at it a different way. She looks at it the way a conservator looks at a panel when she suddenly suspects there might be something else underneath. She thinks about the X-ray she took of the Vermeer 6 weeks ago, stored on the small hard drive in the locked drawer of her desk, and never opened a second time. She thinks about the fact that the Vermeer was acquired, 2 years ago, from an estate represented by a law firm whose lead partner she now recognizes as the same firm that has represented the Lee family's New York holdings since 1973. She has not made this connection before. The connection requires that her professional life and her secret marriage and her hidden pregnancy all sit on the same desk in the same hour of the same afternoon. She turns toward the locked drawer. She does not yet open it. The opening of the drawer is for tomorrow. Tonight is for survival. Tonight is for the burner phone she will buy on Broadway, and the second clinic she will arrange in Mount Vernon, and the small canvas tote she will pack with 3 changes of clothes, and the gold brushstroke hairpin she will leave on the desk, so that whoever comes through this door after she is gone will understand that she walked out, and that she did not run. She stands in the middle of her Harlem studio, 6 weeks pregnant, evicted, professionally erased, photographed at 2 in the morning, blackmailed before breakfast, exiled by cream paper before lunch, and she places one hand on her lower belly, and she places the other hand flat against the back of the Vermeer panel. And she feels, beneath her palm, through 3 centuries of pine board and rabbit skin glue, a faint resistance that she has not felt before. The grain of the panel is uneven. The wood is heavier on the left half than on the right half. The varnish on the back is original. The varnish on the back has never been disturbed. There is something inside the panel, or there is something beneath the painting. She does not yet know which. She will not know which until the locked drawer is open, and the X-ray file is on the screen, and the layered scan reveals what 40 years of dust and obedience have hidden. For now, at 1:43 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in June, in a 6th-floor studio she will be locked out of by sundown, Adrienne Calloway Lee folds the typed letter and the ultrasound and the plane ticket into the inside pocket of her long camel coat. She slides the marriage license photocopy in beside them. She slides the small black notebook in beside that. She lifts the dark green canvas tote bag from the hook by the door and begins, with the same calm she uses to lift varnish from a 400-year-old surface, to pack the parts of her life that the Lee dynasty has not yet been able to reach. The parts of her life they have reached are still on the floor around her. The parts they have not reached fit easily into a single bag. At 1:58 she leaves the studio for the last time. She does not go down the front stairs. She goes up. She climbs to the roof, crosses 3 roofs to the access ladder of the building on the corner, descends into an alley she has known for 9 years. She walks 2 blocks east, hails a livery cab on Lenox, hands the driver 3 $20 bills in cash, and asks him to take her to a coffee shop in Mount Vernon beside a small clinic she will reach 46 minutes early. In the rearview mirror, as the cab turns south, she sees a figure in a wrinkled tan trench coat standing on the corner of West 141st Street, looking up at the windows of a 6th-floor studio whose lights have just been switched off. He is not running. He is not in a hurry. He is making a small note in a worn leather notebook. He does not see the cab. The cab turns. The corner slides away. The notebook slides away. Park Avenue is 12 miles south and 1,000 years away. Adrienne presses one hand against her lower belly and one hand against the inside pocket of her camel coat, where the cream envelope sits flat against her ribs, and she lets her forehead rest, for one moment only, against the cool glass of the rear passenger window of a livery cab heading north out of the only city she has ever called home. The cab merges onto the Major Deegan. The skyline of Manhattan slides behind her in the afternoon haze. Somewhere on the 47th floor of a building on Park Avenue, a closet door is still standing open in a master suite, and a 64-year-old matriarch is now sitting in a high-backed chair at the far end of that same corridor, waiting for a phone call from a private investigator that will not come, waiting for a confirmation from a black woman in a long black silk dress that will not arrive, waiting for a problem to remove itself, with cream paper and an Air France ticket, from the only ground the dynasty has not yet learned how to repaint. The cab crosses into Westchester County at 2:04. Adrienne closes her eyes. She does not sleep. She listens, instead, to the soft sound of her own breathing, and to the soft sound, beneath it, of a heartbeat she will be allowed, in 7 more days, to hear out loud for the first time in the back room of a clinic in Mount Vernon, on a different OB-GYN's machine, on a different OB-GYN's clipboard, under a different OB-GYN's careful, watchful, deliberately mislabeled chart number. She thinks very quietly. Beneath the surface of her closed eyes, they have shown me the original ground. Now I will show them mine. The taxi drops her 2 blocks short of the Lee building because she asks it to. She walks the rest in the early gray light, the long silver chain cold against her sternum beneath the boat-neck collar of her long black silk slip dress, the dark green canvas tote folded flat under her arm, her low chignon held by the thin gold hair pin shaped like a brush stroke. She does not enter through the residence lobby. She enters through the service door at the side of the building, the one Sang-hoon used to lead her through the first night, the one the doormen are trained never to remember. He is already waiting at the freight elevator. Park Sang-hoon. Black 3-piece suit, narrow black tie, the small silver earpiece in his right ear with its coiled wire under the collar, The black leather folio held flat against his thigh. The permanent crease between his brows is deeper this morning, the faint pockmark scar at his left jaw catching the overhead bulb. He does not greet her. He simply lifts the folio half an inch, the way a man lifts a key. "You have 11 minutes, he says in his low, careful English. Madame Lee is at morning prayer in the East Salon. She does not move from her cushion before 7. Boss is in the lower garage with the council. Miss Han is sleeping in the green guest room. The cameras on the master floor are looped to a still frame from Tuesday. The closet has been opened for you." She nods. She does not ask him why he is doing this. She has stopped asking that particular question some time ago. The freight elevator rises in its quiet mechanical hush, and she watches the floor numbers climb the small brass panel, and she thinks of the soft sound of a heartbeat she will be allowed, in 6 more days now, to hear in the back room of a clinic in Mount Vernon, and she keeps her breathing even. The master floor is silent. The long pale corridor, the antique runner, the lacquered side table with its single white orchid. The master suite door is unlocked. Sang-hoon does not follow her inside. He stations himself at the corridor end, his back to her, his hands folded in front of him at the wrist, the way a man stands who is pretending not to be guarding a door. She crosses the bedroom without looking at the bed. She crosses the dressing room. She opens the walk-in closet, and the cedar smell rises around her, and the long line of his suits hangs untouched, and the brass hook where her tote spent that long, terrible night still gleams. She lifts the dark green canvas tote off the hook. She slides her hand inside it, and her fingers brush the small rectangular shape of the portable X-ray plate she left there a week ago, wrapped in a square of acid-free tissue, and her breath catches once and then steadies. She had told herself she came back for the tote. She had told herself she came back to retrieve the small handful of restoration tools she had been carrying that night. She had not, until this moment, allowed herself to admit out loud why she really came back. She slides the X-ray plate out of the tissue. She walks back into the dressing room, where the long mirror runs floor to ceiling, where the lighting is the cool, diffused daylight kind he had a Swiss firm install for tying his tie. She holds the plate up to the daylight bar at the top of the mirror, and she waits for her eyes to adjust, and she looks. The Vermeer X-ray. The cracked 17th century Dutch oil panel she has been restoring in her Harlem studio for 14 months. The one she carried to the penthouse that first long evening in her tote because she had been afraid to leave it in her studio after the eviction notice. The one she had X-rayed at the conservation lab in early March, and then, in the chaos of everything that followed, never properly read. She reads it now. Slowly, the way her grandfather taught her to read an X-ray when she was 9 years old in his Harlem studio with his hand resting on the back of her neck. Top layer first, then the underdrawing. Then, beneath the underdrawing, the ghost, the hidden ground. The first canvas the painter painted over. She sees it. Beneath the milkmaid and the cracked pitcher and the soft Delft window, beneath the Vermeer that is not, she is now certain, of Vermeer at all, there is a second portrait, a full-length seated portrait of a young woman in a pale gray hanbok. The single fold of the eyelids, the thin mouth, the sharp, small jaw. The posture so ramrod straight even at 24 it makes the bones of the shoulders look carved. She knows the face. She has seen it pass her in a corridor with a dark rosewood cane and a brass tip. She has heard its voice through the slats of a closet door confirming a kiss that canceled a blood debt. Young Myung-hee, 40 years younger, maybe 42. The fine lines around the eyes not yet drawn. The silver-white hair still black, still loose, still falling past the shoulder in the old way. And in the lower left corner of the X-rayed ground, in the careful blocked Western signature her grandfather always used on his commission pieces, the same signature that hangs on the small canvas above her childhood bed, the same signature that hangs on the church mural on 145th Street, the same signature that hangs on the single portrait of her mother she keeps wrapped in linen in her studio closet. C. Calloway, 1985, Seoul. Her grandfather, Charles Calloway. The Black American painter the family told her had spent the last 2 years of his life painting nothing but landscapes in Senegal. The grandfather who had, in fact, spent 2 months of those 2 years in Seoul on a private commission no one in the family had ever been able to trace. The grandfather, whose final ledger had a single-line entry for a sum of money that did not match any landscape he had ever sold, paid by a private household, the household name redacted in black ink in his own hand. She lowers the plate. Her own face in the long mirror is very still. The small beauty mark just below her left eye looks, in the cool, diffused light, like a single drop of ink someone forgot to wipe. She understands now. All of it, in a single slow breath that fills her chest and does not leave it. The Lee dynasty did not commission a single oil portrait of its young matriarch in 1985 by accident. They commissioned it because at 24, Ma Young-hee was already being positioned to take the council, and a Western oil portrait by a celebrated Black American painter conferred a kind of international cultural legitimacy that no Korean court painter could give. They paid Charles Calloway in cash. They flew him in. They sat him in front of the young matriarch for 6 weeks. They took the finished canvas. And then, somewhere in the 40 years that followed, they made him disappear from the provenance entirely. They painted a Dutch milkmaid on top of him. They circulated the new picture through a careful chain of European auction houses until it carried a Vermeer attribution and a price that would have made her grandfather laugh. They erased the Black artist whose hand had built one of the most important early images of the matriarch they were about to install. And then, 40 years later, the granddaughter of that erased artist had walked into the conservation department of a private New York lab and signed her own name, Adrienne Calloway, on the intake form for the very panel they had buried him under. Ma Young-hee had seen the name. Ma Young-hee had recognized it instantly. Ma Young-hee had begun, very quietly, to engineer her removal because the granddaughter of Charles Calloway, given enough time alone with that panel and a good X-ray machine, was the one person on the planet who would read the underpainting and know exactly whose signature she was looking at. The eviction notice, the gallery contracts evaporating in 36 hours. The PI with the wrinkled tan trench coat and the worn leather notebook and the small Sony recorder clipped to his belt. The one-way Paris ticket in the typed note. The careful, patient surgical removal of a Black American conservator from every social and professional surface that connected her to a panel she did not yet know she had been chosen, by sheer coincidence of family blood and professional speciality, to read. She had thought for days that Ma Young-hee wanted her gone because she was the wrong wife. Black, American, pregnant outside the council's permission, carrying a child who would dilute the dynasty's careful bloodline. She had been wrong. She had been carrying that fear like a stone in her chest, and she had been wrong about the stone the whole time. Ma Young-hee did not want her gone because she was Ti-woo's wife. Ma Young-hee wanted her gone because she was Charles Calloway's granddaughter. The pregnancy was a convenience. The marriage was a convenience. The kiss in the Great Hall was a convenience. Every door that had been quietly closed around her for the last 6 weeks had been closed not by a matriarch protecting her son's bloodline, but by a matriarch protecting the lie at the foundation of her own portrait. The dynasty was not built on a kiss that canceled a blood debt. The dynasty was built on an erased Black artist, and the proof of the erasure was sitting in a dark green canvas tote bag held against the hip of a 6 weeks pregnant Black American conservator standing in a Korean Mafia boss's dressing room at 6:51 on a gray morning in Manhattan. She slides the plate back into the acid-free tissue. She slides the tissue back into the tote. She does not hurry. She walks back through the dressing room, through the bedroom, past the bed she has never once slept in inside this apartment, and out into the long, pale corridor. Sang-hoon is still standing with his back to the master door. He does not turn his head as she passes. She does not speak. She walks the corridor at a steady, measured pace, and she rides the freight elevator down with her hand resting flat on the canvas of the tote, and she steps out through the service door into the early commuter light of Park Avenue, and the doormen do not see her, because the doormen are trained never to remember. She walks 4 blocks east. She stops at a payphone she has not used in 9 years. She drops 2 quarters. She dials a number she committed to memory the year she finished her conservation degree, a number that belongs to a retired curator at the Schomburg Center who once worked with her grandfather on a single small show in 1981. She speaks for 90 seconds. She gives a name, a date, a city, and a private commission. The voice on the other end is quiet for a long beat. Then the voice says, very softly, "Bring me the X-ray. I have his commission ledger in a box in my apartment. I have been waiting for someone to come ask me about Soul for 40 years. Adrienne hangs up. She rests her forehead against the cold glass of the booth for the count of 3. Then she straightens. Then she walks on. She does not go back to Harlem. She rides 3 subways and a bus. And she stops first at a brownstone on 135th Street, where an 83-year-old curator opens a metal box in the kitchen and lays a brittle yellow contract on the table beside her grandfather's coffee-ringed ledger. And Adrienne photographs each page with her phone in steady, careful overhead light, and the curator's papery hand rests on hers for a long moment at the door and says only, "He would be proud of the patience." Adrienne thanks her. She walks on. She ends the morning in a small private conservation lab on a side street in Mount Vernon, and she pays the technician in cash for 45 minutes of his time, and she walks out of the lab at 11 a.m. with a high-resolution scan of the underpainting on a small encrypted drive in the inside pocket of her dress, and a second scan printed on a single sheet of museum-grade matte archival paper, cut to the exact dimensions of the original Vermeer, mounted inside a plain black float frame, sealed under non-glare glass. She carries the framed scan home in a flat brown portfolio case, and she walks the last 6 blocks in the soft, cold afternoon, and the long silver chain with the thin platinum wedding band on it lies cold against her sternum the whole way. 3 days pass. She does not call him. He does not call her. On the first day, she calls Dr. Eleanor Vance from the studio landline. She tells her in plain, even sentences what she has found and what she is about to do. Dr. Vance listens. Dr. Vance does not interrupt. When Adrienne finishes, Dr. Vance says only, "I am moving your file to Mount Vernon tonight. I will book the backroom machine for the 11th at 1 in the afternoon. You will hear the heartbeat then. Do this thing first. Come to me after." Adrienne closes her eyes. She thanks her. She hangs up. On the second day, she scans her grandfather's ledger pages into a single PDF, encrypts them, and emails the encrypted file to 3 separate addresses: the Schomburg curator, a contract lawyer in Philadelphia who specializes in restituted art, and a single editor at a small independent art historical journal who has, twice in the last decade, broken cases of erased Black artists in major collections. She does not attach a note. She does not need to. The PDF carries her grandfather's signature on every 4th page. On the 3rd day, she dresses. The same long black silk slip dress. The same low chignon held by the same gold hairpin shaped like a brush stroke. The same plain black low-heel mules. She lifts the framed scan off the work table, slides it into the flat brown portfolio, lifts the dark green canvas tote off the hook beside the door, and walks out into the cold blue afternoon. The official wedding banquet has been moved up by the council, the way the engagement was moved up, to the 8th of the month, in the grand ballroom on the 38th floor of the Lee Building, 220 guests. The international press locked out, the internal press locked in, the gift table set in the long marble vestibule beneath the gold characters for longevity and union. She arrives at 4 in the afternoon, 2 hours before the doors open. She is not on the guest list. She does not need to be. Sang-hoon meets her at the service door again, his folio held flat against his thigh again, his crease between the brows again, and he leads her up the freight elevator to the 38th floor through the catering corridor, and the catering staff do not look at her, because the catering staff are trained never to remember either. The gift table is laid in white silk, long, 12 meters, already half-loaded with the early arrivals of the major houses, lacquered boxes, jade, celadon, a single small wrapped Patek Philippe in pale blue, a pair of 19th century Joseon scroll paintings in their original wooden cases from the Kim family, the careful, expensive currency of a dynasty announcing the closing of a debt. She walks the length of the table. She finds the center. She lifts the framed scan out of the flat brown portfolio. She does not unwrap it. She does not need to. The scan beneath the non-glare glass is already perfectly visible. Young Myung-hee in her pale gray hanbok, the single fold of the eyelids, the thin mouth, the signature in the lower left corner. C. Callaway, 1985, Seoul, in the careful blocked western hand. She places it at the center of the table. She straightens the frame with the side of her hand. She steps back once to check the angle. She does not leave a card. She does not need to. She turns, and she walks back along the catering corridor, and she rides the freight elevator down, and she steps out through the service door into the cold blue early evening, and she does not look back. 6 p.m., the doors open. The 220 guests begin to flow in. The first to pass the gift table is Han Jae-soo in her ivory silk modern hanbok dress embroidered with white peonies at the hem, her heavy gold and jade necklace catching the chandelier light, her long white silk gloves folded once at the wrist, the single white camellia pinned above her right ear. She stops in front of the framed scan. She looks at it for a long time. She does not call anyone over. She lifts her gloved hand and presses 2 fingers very lightly against the wrist of her other hand, 3 times, the small private code of a hostage acknowledging another hostage, and then she walks on. The second to pass is Myung-hee. Floor-length charcoal gray silk hanbok with the silver crane embroidery at the hem, the single string of black South Sea pearls, the dark rosewood cane with the brass tip. She is mid-sentence with the senior aunt of the Kim family when her eye catches the frame, and the sentence does not finish. Her ramrod-straight posture does not change. Her thin mouth does not move. The fine lines around her sharp, single-fold eyes do not deepen. She stands in front of the scan for what the senior aunt of the Kim family will later, very privately, describe as the longest 12 seconds of her life. Then she turns, slowly, and she walks on, and the dark rosewood cane taps the marble at exactly the rhythm it was tapping a moment before, and that, too, is the longest 12 seconds of her life. The third to pass is the council. All 11 of them, one by one, the senior uncle from Busan, the grand-aunt from Daegu, the cousin from the Singapore branch, the gray lawyer from the Seoul office. They each stop, they each look, they each move on. None of them speak to each other about it. None of them ever will. By 7 p.m., the gift table is the only subject in the room no one is discussing. The banquet does not happen. The official explanation, released through the family's communications office at 9:15 p.m., is that the bride has been taken ill. The annulment paperwork, filed by Han Jae-soo's own lawyer through a private courthouse in Seoul, is dated the same evening and is granted at 6:40 the following morning Korean time. On the grounds, simply stated, of non-consummation and mutual withdrawal of consent. Taewoo arrives at the Harlem studio at 6:52 a.m. Eastern. The early light is just beginning to lift over the brownstones. He is wearing the custom black single-button Brioni wool suit and the pressed white poplin shirt with no tie, the mirror-polished black leather Oxfords, the gold vintage Patek Philippe Calatrava on the left wrist, the black silk pocket square. The jet-black ink dragon coils up the right side of his neck from collarbone to behind the ear, the tail wrapping over the throat, the single red ink dot for the eye catching the dawn through the studio window. The faint vertical scar through his right eyebrow is wider than usual. She opens the door in the long black silk slip dress she has not changed out of in 26 hours. The low chignon is loosening at the nape. The thin gold hairpin shaped like a brush stroke is still in place. The small beauty mark just below her left eye is shadowed in the early light. She does not say his name. She steps back. She lets him in. He does not speak either. He reaches under his collar with 2 fingers and lifts out the thin gold chain he has worn for the last 6 months, the one that has carried his wedding band hidden against his sternum the way her thin platinum band has been hidden against hers. He unclasps the chain. He slides the gold band off it. He lets the empty chain fall back inside his shirt. He takes her left hand. He lifts it into the early daylight that is now coming through the long studio window in a wide pale bar across the work table, and the half-restored Vermeer, and the small framed portrait of her mother, and the brass cup of varnish-stained brushes. He slides the gold band onto her finger in full daylight. He does not let go of her hand. The thin platinum band she has been wearing on the silver chain comes out from under the boatneck collar a moment later. She unclasps the chain herself. She slides her own band off. She slides it onto his finger in the same wide bar of daylight. Neither of them says anything. There is nothing to say that the two bands sliding into the open light have not already said. Later, much later, when the small framed portrait of her mother has been moved to a higher shelf to make room above the work table, for the small framed scan of the underpainting that Sang-hoon delivered, very quietly, in a plain brown envelope. The gift table copy with the non-glare glass and the float frame intact. The master suite walk-in closet door on the 34th floor of the Lee building remains. For reasons no one on the staff is ever asked to explain, standing open. Sang-hoon notices it the first morning. He does not close it. Lee Myung-hee passes it 3 times that day on her way to and from the East Salon for morning prayer. She does not close it. She passes it on the 4th day and the 7th and the 14th. She does not close it. On the 22nd day, she stops in front of it. She lifts the dark rosewood cane with the brass tip. She rests the brass tip against the door's lower hinge. She stands there for a long time. She lowers the cane. She walks on. She does not close it. The cleaning staff are told very quietly through Sang-hoon that the door is not to be closed. No reason is given. No reason is asked for. The closet remains open. The cedar smell drifts very faintly into the bedroom corridor every morning of every week of every month that follows. Some doors stay open not because someone forgot to close them, but because someone is no longer allowed to. In Mount Vernon, in the back room of a small clinic with deliberately mislabeled chart numbers and a different OB/GYN's careful watchful machine, Adrian hears, for the first time, out loud, the soft, fast rhythm of a heartbeat that is 6 weeks and 6 days old. She closes her eyes. She rests one hand on the small canvas tote in her lap. She listens. The gold band on her left hand catches the overhead bulb. The long silver chain has been put away in a drawer in her studio that she does not need to open again. She thinks, very quietly, beneath the surface of her closed eyes, he was here the whole time. My grandfather, beneath their ground, under their paint, waiting for me to lift the light and read him, and I did, and the door is open now, and it will stay open, because I am the one who opened it, and they are no longer allowed to close it. Not on him, not on me, not on the heartbeat in this room. The machine hums. The heartbeat continues. Outside the small clinic window, the early afternoon light moves slowly across the brick of the building opposite. In the careful, patient way, light moves across a canvas that has finally, after 40 years of being buried, been allowed to come up to the surface and be seen. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever carried proof of who you really are inside a bag that nobody bothered to open? Have you ever stood behind a door, listening to people decide your life in a language they thought you couldn't understand? And when the truth was finally hung on the wall for everyone to see, did the people who erased you have the courage to look at it? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about erased legacy, hidden marriage, and dignity restored in silence, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.